Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Time and space transaction. Exchange food for the elf princess at the beginning. Chapter 21. Just talking about the surrounding environment and various supporting facilities of the villa took nearly an hour. To be honest, before this, Su Yi bought a villa just because he was rich and wanted to find a bigger living environment. He no longer wanted to settle for a rental house of tens of square meters, or buy a commercial house of more than 100 square meters to compete with neighbors for the elevator. But now that he has seen the environment and various supporting facilities in this villa area, he really feels that this kind of villa area, where the average price of a house starts at 10 million, has almost no shortcomings except that it is expensive. It is a lake where you can fish freely, and there are a lot of fish in it. It is also a forest that can produce all kinds of mountain products, and you don't have to worry about snakes, insects, rats, and ants. Each villa also comes with a garden with an area of more than 1 acre, and there is no restriction on what the owner can do with the garden. You can raise some flowers and plants or grow some vegetables. Even if you build a paddy field to grow rice, no one will care about you. As long as it doesn't affect your neighbors, you can do whatever you want. The distance between each building is more than 100 meters, so it is difficult to influence the neighbors. In addition, the community also has public camping areas, barbecue areas, stadiums, track and field and other facilities in scenic places, which owners can use for free. Of course, although it is said to be free, in fact, the maintenance of these supporting facilities must cost money. It's just that all the money is included in the property fee. The villa that Su Yi wants to buy has a usable construction area of more than 700 square meters, and the annual property fee that needs to be paid exceeds 150,000. It is higher than the annual income of ordinary people. But this amount of money is obviously nothing to people who can spend tens of millions to buy such a villa. The most important thing is that you can buy services that make you feel comfortable. After looking at the first building, Su Yi and the two followed to see another building. Comparing the two, he prefers the building facing the lake, and Yuling also prefers the building that is further away from the hustle and bustle of the entrance to the community and closer to nature. Of course, there are also shortcomings. After all, we are by the lake. No matter how we deal with it, there will inevitably be more mosquitoes in summer. But this is a problem for others, but it is a complete trivial matter for Su Yi. Yuling is right next to her. The elves are close to nature and have many ways to deal with these annoying little things. Ever since Su Yi complained when he was bitten by a mosquito at the hotel the night before yesterday, he hadn't seen anything like a mosquito in the past 2 days. He was not one to procrastinate. After making a decision, he followed sales directly back to the sales department. Go through the formalities and transfer money in one go. The 30 million he had just received had not yet warmed up, but he had already sold out 28 million. After all, this building is nearly 40,000 square feet. In fact, the current housing prices in Zhongcheng are not among the top ones, but this thing also depends on the location. The environment here is really good, and the location. It's said that it's in the urban-rural fringe, and it's in a good location. This kind of location sells this kind of price, and of course most of it is spent on the actual living experience. But for Su Yi, this kind of place is indeed enough. He no longer needs to rush to work during the morning and evening rush hours. On the contrary, his farm is also in the suburbs, not far from here. If he really wants to buy a house in a good area in the city center, he will probably only be able to buy a small house of less than 200 square meters with this money. Not only will the living experience be poor, but it will make your daily commute more difficult. All in all, he was satisfied with everything here. You couldn't understand the desire of Kyushu people for a house of their own, so naturally she didn't understand why Su Yi was so happy. But on the way back, she still suggested, I see that there is a lot of open space around the house you bought. If possible, you might as well trade some magical plants from that world with Princess Wei Wei. I can help you turn the yard into a garden full of magical plants. It is not only beautiful, but also it has certain defensive functions, and many magical plants have special effects, and they have some special effects after being eaten. Quote, magic plant. Su Yi was stunned for a moment. He had never thought about this before, Yuling reminded him. But if you think about it carefully, Yuling, as an elf, must be very familiar with various plants in their world. With her helping me, I might be able to get some specialties from another world. But there's a problem here. The environments of the two worlds should be different, right? Can the magical plants from your world grow here? Why not? Yu Ling asked doubtfully. I even feel that the magic energy in your place is more abundant than in our world. If you transplant the magic plants from our place here, you will not only be able to grow them, but I think they will even grow better than ours. We also have magical energy here. Of course, otherwise how could I use magic here? Listening to Yu Ling's matter-of-fact tone, Su Yi was really shocked. So, wouldn't it be possible to practice magic in Blue Star? But after thinking about it carefully, he shook his head and said, "This is impossible. If this is the case, then why has there never been a magician or warrior like you in our world?" Yu Ling said in a slightly weird tone. "If I remember correctly, you said before that the oldest civilization recorded here is your Kyushu, and it's only that, yes, 5,000 years, right? That counts as 10,000 years. Do you know how long we were there? How long? The Blazing Sun Empire where Princess Wei Wei is located has existed for more than 120,000 years. Our elf kingdom has existed even longer, because the elf race is an immortal race and has a longer life. They can live for at least 1,000 years. We have written records. Its history exceeds 300,000 years. Yu Ling said seriously. You are too young and have not really learned how to harness the special energy in the universe. Of course, even the world we live in may not have gone very far on this road to transcendence. It has only taken hundreds of thousands of years, and I'm afraid we have just started on this road. This is not my personal conjecture, but a reasonable guess after knowing that there is a world like your Blue Star and a trading platform outside our world. As far as I know, in our place, some extremely powerful gods of law or gods of war, the lifespan can exceed 10,000 years, and some of our elves have even lived for more than 100,000 years. On the road to transcendence, time is the least valuable thing, and your Blue Star's civilization history of more than 10,000 years is too young. That's not right, Su Yi frowned and said. Although human civilization is young, Blue Star has existed for a long time, and life appeared billions of years ago. If there is magical power in our world, then there should be more or less of these creatures that have existed for such a long time. Something special, right? Exclamation mark. Yu Ling frowned when she heard this, as if she was thinking about how to explain to Su Yi. After a moment, she said, "This power is very special. If we rely solely on the unconscious adaptation, absorption and evolution of animals and plants to utilize it, it will be an extremely slow process. In fact, most of the magic plants I told you were artificially cultivated by our people after they discovered the power of magic. The same is true for those dangerous monsters. They were all cultivated by intelligent creatures who first discovered the power of magic. However, these intelligent creatures may not be humans. Elves, dragons, and dwarves have basically done similar things. Animals and plants that are cultivated and exposed to magical power will also develop wisdom after they are strong enough to a certain extent, so a new intelligent race is born. They may use the power of magic to cultivate other races for certain purposes. This is the reason why our world can have so many intelligent races now. Many races are not born intelligent. As for which race among these races is naturally produced, it is impossible to trace the origin of the one who first discovered magical power and then created other races. Well, it can be regarded as an unsolved mystery on our side. But after coming to Blue Star, I can probably guess the answer. Human beings are the first intelligent race to be born in nature. Why do your words sound so permeable? In this way, there are so many races in their world, and it seems that they are all the results of the biological experiments of the ancestors there. Even Su Yi could imagine what the ancestors of their world who created other races were thinking. For example, after mastering powerful magical power, I feel that my human body is too weak and my lifetime is too short. Therefore, immortal species such as elves were created in an attempt to obtain a longer lifespan. This kind of thing is really something humans can do. As for cultivating so many chaotic races, whether these intelligent races will compete with future generations of humans for survival resources after they develop is obviously not something these people consider. Just trust in the wisdom of future generations and that's it. The logic is totally fine. I think we should continue talking about magic plants. Su Yi felt that this topic was still a bit too grand, and it wasn't what he should be concerned about right now. Decisively chose to change the topic. Do you think if some special magical plants are introduced from your world here, can they be planted on a large scale? Or can we cultivate some of our local specialty magical plants from local materials and then sell them back to you? That world. Yu Ling thought carefully and said, the magic power of Blue Star is more abundant than that of our world. It should be feasible to plant magic plants in large areas. It just requires some special magic circles that gather magic power. Princess Wei Wei doesn't have this thing. You have to let her. It will probably be troublesome to purchase them. The only ones where we can plant magic plants on a large scale are our elves in the Magic Kingdom. We elves can do this because of the existence of the Fountain of Life in Moon Lake. The Magic Kingdom relies on the cultivation of magic circles, and their method is more suitable for your world. Why? Su Yi glanced at her and said, didn't I say that the core of the Fountain of Life is in you? This thing is also a man-made creation, right? Let's find a way to build a Fountain of Life on Blue Star, too. It's difficult. Yu Ling shook her head. The Fountain of Life is said to have been created in an extremely ancient period. Dozens of magicians at the level of magic gods spent countless rare treasures to jointly create it. Even in our world, it is impossible to create another one now, let alone the current one here. There is almost no theoretical basis for magic, and I am the only one who knows magic. In contrast, as long as you can afford to pay enough for a large magic circle, the Magic Kingdom can still sell it. And if you are just growing magic plants on the scale of your farm, in fact, we may not necessarily need a large magic circle in the early stage. It is enough for you to ask Wei Wei to help you purchase a small magic circle. There is no purchase threshold for this. As long as she is willing, she can easily. It's easy to buy. Okay, Su Yi sighed regretfully, but after asking Yu Ling about the effects of these magical plants, her fighting spirit suddenly rekindled. There are some that can be used as bodyguards at home, which are better than dogs. There are foods specially grown for eating. If you eat too much, ordinary people can gain the level of strength of their new warriors, and it is easy to kill a cow with one punch. There are also some magical plants that are specially designed to beautify people, prolong life, and even aphrodisiac. These are all business opportunities. Su Yi's current farm has nearly 20,000 acres of land. Even if he only grows these special magic plants on the farm, he doesn't dare to think about the price that the things he grows can be sold for. This is the only good thing in the entire Blue Star. In addition to plants, there are also magical beasts specially bred for food in the magical world. That thing is even more awesome. The main thing is that you can eat it to keep fit, and it tastes better than any ordinary animal. This is all a business opportunity. With an elf like Yu Ling helping him, he didn't have to worry about being an amateur and buying all the good stuff to feed himself. If that doesn't work, he can buy a few more elves from Wei Wei to help take care of the farm. The primary life trading authority card in the trading platform Points Mall is not expensive. This is a surefire deal. Only planted in the yard of the villa. Too small, the layout is too small. He wants to plant everything on his farm. If Yu Ling hadn't seen the yard of the villa and suddenly mentioned it out of the elf's nature, Su Yi would never have thought of such a way to make money. The farm that he originally purchased as a white glove to purchase various supplies, now seems to be really not a free purchase. There are so many benefits. You are really my lucky lady. The more Su Yi thought about it, the more excited he became. If he hadn't been driving the car right now, he would have wanted to hold Yu Ling and kiss her hard. After obtaining the trading platform, he didn't think about how to use the platform to make big money. Before, he only knew how to make money stupidly. But this can't be blamed on him. The magical world is a completely unfamiliar world to him. He doesn't have the ability to foresee things, so naturally he doesn't know what other people's things are more valuable to him, and he's still in the exploratory stage. The arrival of Yu Ling obviously allowed him to skip this stage. As long as she knows, Su Yi can quickly use the transaction with Wei Wei on the trading platform to develop and grow in Blue Star. At the same time, more frequent and valuable transactions can also allow him to obtain membership points of the trading platform faster. Once he has accumulated a certain amount of points, he can purchase a matching card to find more valuable worlds for cooperation. quickly integrate into the trading platform system and develop healthily. Award. Hearing that Su Yi wanted to reward herself, Yuling thought carefully for a while and then said, "If you can quickly give me the world language access card in the trading platform, that will be the best reward." She is curious about everything in this world, especially that magical network. However, due to the language barrier, I have never been able to learn more about Blue Star through the internet. Even playing games is difficult to operate many times, and you have to ask Su Yi for everything. The language pass card produced by the trading platform is really important for whether she can play games online every day and become a stay-at-home girl. World language pass card. Su Yi was stunned for a moment, then came back to his senses. He said that he always felt like he had forgotten something today. Yesterday, he made an appointment with Sun Wang, the former boss of Yuanfang Farm, that a batch of about 8 tons of fruits and vegetables would be delivered from the farm today. In addition, the 2 tons of frozen meat he asked Fa Xiaohuanglin to help him should be delivered to the frozen warehouse he rented in advance today. Suddenly becoming extremely rich and wealthy in the Shen family, he had forgotten all these trivial things, with a total price of only around 100,000 yuan. Thinking of this, he quickly dialed the phone number at the warehouse to inquire. Sure enough, although the Shen family had somehow asked Sun Wang to transfer the farm, Sun Wang was an honest man and still sent all 8 tons of fruits and vegetables to the place he designated as agreed yesterday. It is estimated that the Shen family also mentioned Su Yi's matter during the transaction process. So Sun Wang didn't even make a call from the beginning to the end, as if he was afraid of disturbing Su Yi's business, so he just finished everything for him. Even at the warehouse, Su Yi only rented it temporarily for 1 day, and told the warehouse manager that he planned to deliver the goods this morning, and he would go to the warehouse to take them away in the afternoon. Because the lease period was too short and he didn't tow the things away at the agreed time, the warehouse manager was worried and called him to ask about the situation. As a result, Su Yi was looking at a house at that time, and his cell phone was left in the car and he didn't answer it at all. Now after asking, I found out that after the warehouse management couldn't get through to him, they called Sun Wang again. After Sun Wang knew the situation, he took the initiative to pay for him to rent for a few more days, and told the management that Su Yi had important matters and asked them not to keep calling Su Yi. If Su Yi never picked up the goods, they would end up in the warehouse. If it's rotten inside, then notify him and he will take care of it. People handled things so openly, so Su Yi naturally had to show it when he found out. Deng Ji took the initiative to call Sun Wang to express his gratitude, and by the way, Sun Wang invited him to have dinner with him. After calling Sun Wang, he called Fa Xiaohuanglin again. The situation is similar. After the frozen meat was delivered to his designated freezer in the afternoon, because he had not come to take it away beyond the agreed time, he had to contact Huanglin for the convenience of renting the cave. Sun Wang probably heard some rumors and knew what he was doing for the Shen family. But Huanglin didn't know. After he called Su Yi but failed to get through, he took the initiative to pay the fee and helped Su Yi extend the rental period of the cold storage. As soon as Su Yi called, Huanglin on the other end cursed. "Where did you go, you idiot? I didn't answer the phone. I thought you were caught when you went to the club. I already had the fine ready and was waiting to catch you. It's worth tens of thousands of dollars. If you give it up, my father will have to skin me." Although he spoke very rudely, there was a smile in his tone, and he obviously didn't think Su Yi would do such a thing. It's just the daily mutual dissatisfaction between friends. Su Yi was not annoyed at all and said with a smile, No, tiger poison doesn't eat its seeds, how can I peel off your skin? Your father has grown up, and I see that you are quite filial to such a big boy. I will treat you to a nice meal. Come out now, and you can take the seat of your choice. Did you choose my position? Is that true, foster father? Huanglin on the other end of the phone changed his face for a second, and then said doubtfully, You are so generous. What kind of windfall did you make recently? Give it to me honestly. Did you engage in some shady business? If so, why didn't you bring me one? It's nothing. I bravely saved a little girl. She is the daughter of a rich family. Her father gave me hundreds of millions to thank me. Su Yi said lightly. As he said this, he also sent a screenshot of his balance to Huanglin. This is the remaining money after buying the house, and there is still more than 2 million. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Huang Lin thought Su Yi was joking a second ago and was about to scold him for daydreaming. The next second I saw his balance, I was stunned and said quickly. Not a buddy. No, foster father. Father, did you really get millions given to you just because you saved a little girl? Fake, it's several hundred million. How many M? Okay, then it's a few hundred million. Foster father, I want to go to the most expensive restaurant in Zhongcheng. I told you, you choose the location and I'll pay for it. After a friendly exchange with the good brother successfully became a good man. Su Yikai hung up the phone with satisfaction. After hanging up, I still had some unfinished thoughts. You see, sometimes people don't believe you when you tell the truth. After the integration of the Shen family, the super large farm is definitely worth several hundred million. He wasn't bragging. Speaking of which, he had known Huang Lin for at least 20 years. Well, he is 26 years old. They met in kindergarten and have been classmates from elementary school to junior high school. And we have been neighbors for more than 10 years. Later, Huang Lin's father made money from the catering business, and his family moved into downtown Zhongcheng. But when it came to college, the two of them were admitted to a first-class university in Zhongcheng together. Since they could choose their own dormitories, they naturally became roommates for 4 more years. When Su Yi was in college, something happened to Su Yi's family. His father was injured on a construction site and lost the ability to work. The family was very poor. Su Yi could only work and go to school at the same time, making money to pay various tuition and miscellaneous fees. He was reluctant to eat and wear, and barely maintained his studies. During this period, Huang Lin would always find various reasons to give him something and take him out to eat here and there. Even his first computer was forced upon him by Huang Lin as a gift on his birthday. Huang Lin also tactfully mentioned Su Yi's work-study program several times, saying that he had told his father that he could help Su Yi pay for the tuition and various miscellaneous expenses, so that Su Yi could go to school with peace of mind and not be so tired. At first, he and his father didn't even expect Su Yi to repay. After being rejected several times, they finally offered to lend him a sum of money, but Su Yi still didn't accept it. Of course, it's not that he doesn't recognize good people. But he felt that he owed Huang Lin enough favors, and if he owed more, he might not be able to pay it off in his lifetime. Including this time, he asked Huang Lin to help him get several tons of frozen meat, and Huang Lin agreed without even asking what it would be used for. For such a good brother, now that Su Yi has become prosperous, it is naturally impossible to forget him. In the end, Huang Lin didn't choose any very high-end restaurant. It happened to be night time, so we found a famous food stall in Zhongcheng. The noisy food stalls late at night made Yuling, a visitor from another world, very curious. Su Yi and Huang Lin have long been accustomed to it. The two hadn't seen each other for a while, and Huang Lin gave him a bear hug when they met. After some pleasantries, he saw Yuling next to Su Yi. He was stunned for a moment and then looked at Su Yi in surprise. This is your foster mother. Su Yi skillfully held Yuling's shoulders. She doesn't care about this kind of thing anyway, and she really needs an identity in this world. Human, in modern society refers not only to human beings, but also to nodes that constitute a network of relationships in a complex social system. As an elf, Yuling looks almost like a human. After using a little magic to cover up her pointed ears, she can't tell any difference from a normal person. But after coming to Blue Star, she is not actually a person, in the true sense. In addition to having no formal identity, she also has no network of connections as a normal person in modern society. A person who did not exist before. If Su Yi wants to give her a formal identity in the future, this will definitely not work now. It will be easy to give her an identity first, and then use this identity as the center to gradually expand the network of relationships. Of course, there are easier ways, such as saving some dignitary with the water of life in his hand. With his connections, it is not difficult to give Yuling an identity. But this operation has great disadvantages. It is easy to arouse others' suspicion and cause unnecessary trouble. After all, when someone checked, no one in the world except Su Yi knew this person, which was too weird. Now she often walks around as Suyi's girlfriend, and with her appearance that can leave a deep impression on everyone, over time, she can easily integrate into modern society, and it is difficult to find any abnormalities without careful inspection. After all, so many people have seen her. Even if you say she is an alien, no one will believe her. This is one of the reasons why Suyi always takes her with him when he goes out. Of course, the main thing is to be an eye-catching bodyguard. What the hell? Huang Lin didn't care about Suyi's behavior of taking advantage. He looked at Yu Ling several times and then looked at his good brother strangely. You don't look blind at all. Why do you fall in love with you? What are you talking about? I am a charming man, and the tree is close to the wind. Isn't it normal for you to fall in love with me? The two exchanged a few insults, and then entered the food stall together. Huang Lin also brought his girlfriend with him. He knew very well who his good brother was, a complete scumbag. But people almost have the word, scumbag, written on their faces. There are women who do this to him, thinking that his family is rich and fantasizing about marrying into a wealthy family and becoming a rich wife. Who is to blame? This Suyi had never met before, was not familiar with him at all, and had no intention of getting acquainted with him. They just said hello to each other and that was it. After all, next time we meet, there might be another person following him, and there is no need to recognize him at all. On the other hand, the girl who was brought here was shocked when she saw Yu Ling's incredible appearance. After sitting down, he carefully asked Yu Ling what brand of cosmetics she usually uses, how she takes care of herself, and why her skin is so good. But Yu Ling didn't understand anything, so naturally she couldn't respond. Suyi directly explained that she was deaf and mute and couldn't hear at all. I planned to send it to others. But he still underestimated a woman's persistence in skin care. Seeing that Yu Ling couldn't answer, she turned to ask Suyi. She doesn't use any skin care products or cosmetics. As for skin care, she keeps her hair. She stays up all night playing games all night long. It's all because of her talent. You can't stop the other party with just one sentence. This is like ordinary people who study hard but can barely pass when they ask a top student with perfect scores how they study. As a result, the top student said that they usually just play games and sleep. You can't learn from pure talent. It was Galen who spoke softly, silently and breaking his guard. I didn't even say a few words after giving it to others. The two of them were just having a dinner date as normal friends. Naturally, they didn't talk too much about work. They basically just bragged and got over it. Of course Huang Lin was curious about Suyi's recent sudden wealth. But Suyi didn't say anything, so he didn't ask. His brother, he believed that if Suyi could tell, he would not hide it from him, but if he couldn't tell, he would embarrass everyone if he asked. And many things, if spoken out, will actually harm others. Just like the existence of a trading platform. Suyi didn't even plan to tell his parents, so naturally he wouldn't tell Huang Lin either. But when he was saying goodbye after dinner, he asked Huang Lin a question. Your family is in the catering business, let me ask you something. What if there is such an ingredient that only needs simple processing? It can be steamed, boiled, baked or fried. Just add some salt, and the taste will be far better than those carefully cooked things. Moreover, eating this ingredient can also strengthen the body, beautify the skin, and even eat if you use it too much, you can be immune to all diseases and have no side effects. It's not an advertisement, it's really effective and very obvious. So will it be a hit? Hey, do you have an elixir? Huang Lin gave him a look. Suyi ignored him and asked. Just tell me whether this thing has commercial value. Of course there is, but only those businesses that sell this kind of food can make a profit. Not only do we in the catering business not make a profit, but if the price of this thing is not expensive, we might all lose our jobs. After all, you have said that no matter what you do, there will be no profit. It's delicious, so what's the point of needing a chef? Huang Lin shrugged. What if this kind of thing is only authorized to be operated by your restaurant? Suyi suddenly laughed. Then I can become the world's #1 catering giant in a matter of minutes. Even KFC Pizza Hut has to kneel down and call me daddy. Huang Lin waved his hand proudly. After all, if you call me foster father, I can't treat you badly. When the time comes, the two of us will buy a yacht. It doesn't need to be too expensive. A yacht worth over 1 billion is enough. We will also hire him for 300 to 500 young models. How can you be so arrogant? Dad, I will buy 2 supercars and 2 villas at a time, and I will take you flying. Remember what you said. Su Yi patted him on the shoulder, then walked out of the food stall and prepared to find a driver to drive back to the hotel. When Huang Lin was patted by him like this, the drunkenness in Huang Lin's eyes receded a bit. After being stunned for a moment, he quickly caught up with Su Yidao. No, are you serious? Did you really get the elixir? Hard to say. Su Yi shrugged. If I really did, I would definitely not forget you. Many of the magical creatures Yu Ling suggested he introduce are edible ingredients. If successfully cultivated on Blue Star, it will definitely be on the dining table in the future and become a high-end food ingredient. However, Su Yi has no interest in the catering industry, mainly because he can only earn so much from this thing. The real bulk of these items is in the medical field. Instead of wasting time and effort on building a catering brand to make money selling these ingredients, he might as well find someone more professional to do it and share part of the profits. Naturally, such a good thing cannot be taken advantage of by outsiders. As for whether Huang Lin is capable enough, this is secondary. There is a saying that is right, if you stand on the wind, even a pig can take off. Not to mention that this is still a completely monopolized outlet. It doesn't matter how he manages it. What matters is whether those magical creatures really have the effect that Yu Ling said after arriving at Blue Star. After a night of silence, Su Yi came to the food processing factory where he was working early the next morning. He had already told Li Wenyuan last night that he would come to receive the batch of flour today. This was the item agreed upon in the second transaction between him and Wei Wei. It would not be appropriate to delay it for too long, so he planned to send this batch of flour today together with the fruits, vegetables and meat that had been delivered yesterday. Otherwise, he could completely ignore Li Wenyuan now, resign his position in the food processing factory and run away. After all, tomorrow at the latest, his farm will be able to complete all procedures, and he can also openly purchase a large amount of grain in the name of the farm. Like last time, this transaction was smoother. Su Yi bought 1,000 tons of flour that idiot Lu Sheng bought last month for reserve at a price of 20 cents per kilogram higher than the current market price. Nothing unexpected happened along the way. Transportation is still the same as before, and the food processing factory is responsible for it. By the time all the 1,000 tons of flour were delivered to the warehouse designated by Su Yi, it was already evening. This is a large-scale granary, not far from Su Yi's farm. Because it is in the suburbs, the price is not expensive. He directly bought the entire warehouse. In the future, we are planning to upgrade and renovate it and add a special cold storage. There is a farm, so it is reasonable for him to do these things. And after having his own warehouse, he no longer has to worry about the inexplicable disappearance of things in the warehouse and arousing suspicion from others. Collect the grain into your own trading item storage space, and then go to the cold storage and another warehouse to bring all the fruits, vegetables and meat. Su Yi finally entered the trading platform again. Although she had not made an appointment in advance, Wei Wei still came as soon as she was asked. Just a few minutes after Su Yi informed her through the trading platform that all the goods were in place, she appeared in the trading space. He transferred all the things to her, and the 2 transactions between the 2 parties were completed. Because there is only one free transaction opportunity on the trading platform every week, and this is already the second transaction for the 2 people this week. Therefore, after the transaction is completed, 10 membership points will be deducted for each person. After delivering all the fruits, vegetables, meat and grain, Su Yi gained another 19 points. 5 points will be awarded for successfully completing 1 transaction, and 10 points will be awarded for 2 transactions. In addition to the 8 points obtained when sending rice before. Su Yi now has a lot of membership points. Su Yi, identity. Registered member of the space-time trading platform, 1,000 points will be deducted, and you can upgrade to a senior member to unlock more permissions. Points. 27 points. Permissions, special items. Storage space, primary life trading permission card. 10 points will be deducted for each additional transaction, and you can buy a world language access card. It's really expensive. Next time, it's best to think about what you want to trade in advance and hand over everything within a week at once. Looking at the 10 points spent in the second transaction, and looking at the good things in the system mall, Suyi only felt numb. Wei Wei also agreed. This stupid platform system actually eats both sides. The points deducted for extra transactions are not deducted for one party, but 10 points for both parties. This is no different from robbing money. Although it's only 10 points, there are really a lot of good things you can buy in the points mall. Suyi even saw that the complete set of nuclear fusion technology was only sold in the system mall for 3,000 membership points. Even if you can't afford it now, just matching a few more trading partners and saving for a few years will be enough. When the time comes to create such a good thing, it is no exaggeration to say that it will be the light of mankind. What do you want next? Food. After the previous transaction is completed, it is natural to talk about the subsequent transaction. It's better to prepare in advance. Of course, I need food for a long time. Wei Wei thought for a moment. It would be great if you could provide some weapons, preferably consumables such as arrows. If there are any special weapons in your world that we don't have here, I can also purchase a batch to try the effect. Quote, I can provide food, and I can provide more next week, starting at least 3,000 tons. As for weapons, there is no problem with arrows, and special weapons, we also have them here, but I'm afraid they won't be able to do that in a short time. It's easy to get, just give me some time. As for the power of these weapons, you can rest assured that they are useless against strong men like you and Yu Ling, but they are as efficient as cutting grass when used against ordinary soldiers. No difference. Just kidding, if you don't consider that the other side is a magical world. Modern weapons are like meat grinders on the cold weapon battlefield over there, and they can kill indiscriminately. Even if there is extraordinary power over there, it is impossible for everyone to have the confidence like Yu Ling who can ignore the hot weapons of individual soldiers. Thermal weapons should still be useful there. Where's the reward? What do you want? Or gold? Wei Wei asked quickly. Being able to steadily provide food and weapons, with such a partner, she felt a little more confident about the war she was currently facing. First of all, I need a magic circle to gather magic energy. A small one will do. Yu Ling said it shouldn't be difficult for you to get this. Secondly, I need the seeds of some special magical creatures, as well as a pair of giant horned cattle that have reached adulthood and have entered the breeding period. I need one male and one female. The female is preferably pregnant. As he spoke, he took out a list of the qualities of magical plants that Yu Ling had selected. As for the giant horned ox, it was naturally Yu Ling's suggestion. Suyi had traded so much rice before, and there were always some missing and unprocessed rice seeds in it. Since that was not considered a living creature, most of the seeds of magic plants were not counted either. And animals like these warcraft are definitely considered living creatures. To trade, you need a life trading permission card. This meant that it was impossible for Suyi to directly introduce large quantities of those warcraft cubs from another world. The introduction of one male and one female is of course to facilitate subsequent breeding. If the cow is pregnant, it is equivalent to buying two and getting N free, which is the most cost-effective. As for why the giant horned beast was introduced, it is because it is one of the most mature artificially bred monsters in their world, and even though it is a cow, it is different from the cows on Blue Star that can only give birth to one or two in a litter. A cow can give birth to up to 9 calves in one litter, and at least 5. And it grows very fast and has no special requirements for food. It can just eat ordinary grass. It has tenacious vitality, strong disease resistance, and its ability to adapt to the environment is top-notch. There are branches in every corner of their world. It can not only produce beef, but also milk. They are rich in nutrients, contain special energy, and have endless benefits for people to eat for a long time. Compared to the violent tempers of most warcraft, the giant horned ox is quite docile and has almost no aggression. In the case where a certain type of warcraft must be introduced, it is naturally the most suitable. Tisk, I don't know if it's right or wrong to send Yu Ling to your place. Wei Wei glanced at the list in her hand and knew that Suyi couldn't have done it by herself. Only then did she realize a problem that arose after giving Yu Ling to Suyi. The world she lives in seems to be one-way transparent to Suyi. With a local like Yu Ling by her side, it would be too easy for Suyi to know what good things she had here. But she didn't understand Suyi at all. She didn't think so much at all when she made the transaction. She just thought that sending Yu Ling away would save her a lot of trouble, and that Yu Ling could save her life even if she went to another world. Now it seems that it is not so simple. What do you mean? Can it be done? Okay. Wei Wei glanced at the list a few times and did not refuse. The two immediately began to negotiate the prices of the items on the list. Each item on the list was carefully selected by Yu Ling, and its efficacy and functions were different. Of course, there are differences in price. It is impossible to settle everything according to the fixed price, and each item needs to be priced. The two parties currently have no currency, so they temporarily use membership points that can be traded and transferred as general equivalents. 1 point equals 100 tons of grain. An adult male giant horned cow is worth 5 points, and a pregnant cow is worth 10 points. As for the mess of magic plant seeds, each has a different price according to its use. Naturally, the final transaction between the two parties will not be calculated based on points. After all, neither of them has enough of this thing now. It is most appropriate to use points as general equivalents and finally convert them into grains of the same value for Su Yi's settlement. After the price was almost agreed upon, the two parties agreed to meet again next Monday, that is, 3 days later. Discuss carefully how much you can offer and take advantage of next week's free deals. Then they all went back to their homes contentedly. Of course, when Su Yi went back, he also spent 10 points to buy a world language pass card. Yu Ling has worked hard these past 2 days, and he still needs to be rewarded. Back at Blue Star, Su Yigang handed over the world language access card to Yu Ling. Before he could even try to see if it worked, a call came in. The person on the other end of the phone called Zhou Yan, a manager who claimed to be hired by Shen Mingwen to help him sort out farm affairs. Because Shen Mingwen established the relationship in advance, he got things done very quickly. As of today, basically all the procedures have been completed. Now all he has to do is wait for Su Yi to name the farm and sign a few documents, and then he can take care of all the follow-up matters. Tomorrow night at the latest, the company will be officially open for business. After Su Yi consulted some friends and professional lawyers in related industries, he chose the indirect holding model to control the farm. The business project of the wholly owned company that Shen Mingwen gave him money for was changed and named Tianyu Holdings. Su Yi holds 100% of the shares. After integration, the farm has far exceeded the size limit of local private farms and is now an ecological agriculture demonstration base. Tianyu Agricultural Technology Company, Limited, a subsidiary of Tianyu Holdings, holds 100% of the shares. It seems like this is like taking off your pants and farting. But this is indeed the best choice Su Yi made after consulting with many parties and considering his possible future development path. Now he only has Wei Wei as a partner on the trading platform. He has only started trading and can only produce agriculture for the time being. The scope of business to be operated in the future will definitely be far beyond this. Not to mention other trading partners that may be matched in the future. Just on Wei Wei's side, there are a lot of transactions, and the business cannot be limited to crops such as grain. For example, she needs arrows and even thermal weapons. Arrows Su Yi can now purchase from some factories. If you can't open a factory to make it yourself, it's a small problem. This stuff is not illegal in Kyushu. This kind of factory cannot be owned by the same type of company as the farm. In order to avoid trouble, it will definitely be necessary to set up another company at that time, instead of letting Su Yi personally hold shares in two completely unrelated companies. He might as well set up his own investment company first, then use the investment company as a medium to control other companies, and finally develop into a group. This can save a lot of costs in the company's operations in the future. It is also easier for him to integrate the resources at hand. Even if the team of his subordinates matures in the future, it will not be impossible to open up overseas relationships, such as the entire overseas security company, and get a batch of AKs to send to Wei Wei. For this kind of multinational company, it is obviously more convenient to take the form of public holding by an investment company. At least when signing the contract, he doesn't need to come forward personally. He can just send someone from the company to sign it. As a professional manager, Zhou Yan probably knew that the new boss's ambitions were not limited to a small farm after hearing Su Yi's thoughts. But he was only temporarily invited by Shen Mingwen to help Su Yi handle the chores in the early stages of farm integration. It's hard to say whether Suyi will let him follow him in the future. I don't really care about that. When a customer makes a request, he just goes and fulfills it. If it's not easy, just go to the Shen family. What's more, the matter itself is not difficult to handle. Early the next morning, with the blessing of the Shen family's amazing network of connections, Suyi Tianyu Agricultural Technology Company, Limited and Tianyu Holdings completed all the procedures and could be listed for operation. It is worth mentioning that Tianyu Agriculture has more than 60 million in cash in its account. Tianyu Holdings has another 100 million in cash in its account. Money will not fall from the sky, this is naturally Shen Mingwen's handiwork. People have done things to this extent, so Suyi naturally has to show his sincerity. That night, he took Yuling to Shen's house again. Because they had been notified in advance, not many people from the Shen family were present this time. In addition to Shen Mingwen and his daughter, there is also a boy and a girl. The man is an old man with white beard and hair. He is Shen Mingwen's old father and the real decision-maker in the Shen family. The girl's name is Shen Mingyu, she is about 26 or 17 years old. She is charming, mature and capable, and is Shen Mingwen's younger sister. This is the core member of the Shen family. In addition to this family, there are only 4 tough bodyguards in the villa, all of whom have guns at their waists. They are probably the truly trusted confidants of the Shen family. The ostentation was smaller than when Suyi came before, but the standards were obviously higher. Suyi didn't bother to ask more questions about this. After Shen Mingwen introduced him and said hello, he explained his purpose of coming. Come for treatment, and it was to completely cure the little girl Shen Yingying's congenital leukemia. Although he had long known the purpose of Suyi's coming at this time, Shen Mingwen, a big boss who had been involved in both black and white circles, couldn't help but feel a little nervous. He pulled Suyi and said, "How many % are we sure it will be cured? Will there be any sequelae after the cure? If nothing else happens, I'm 100% sure, and not only will she not have any sequelae, but she will also be healthier and live longer than anyone else in the world." As he said that, Suyi took out a palm-sized exquisite porcelain bottle from his backpack. The premise is that Mr. Shen trusts me and lets me take the medicine. What kind of medicine is this? Shen Mingwen took the porcelain bottle and looked at it. The mouth of the bottle is sealed with a cork and there is no smell. But when you hold it in your hand, you can feel that there is some kind of liquid inside. The secret recipe passed down from our ancestors can cure all diseases and prolong life. Inside the porcelain bottle is naturally the water of life. It was just a diluted version of the 500 milliliters water of life that Wei Wei had traded to him. This bottle is 100 milliliters, and drinking about 2/3 of it is enough to cure Shen Yingying's illness and extend her life to 150 years old. The initial version of the water of life he got required only about 5 milliliters to achieve this effect. As for the remaining third in the bottle, Suyi regarded it as a reward for the Shen family's dedicated efforts to help him. If Suyi said that this was an ancestral medicine that could treat leukemia, Shen Mingwen chose to let him use it without even thinking about it. After all, he had seen Suyi's ability with his own eyes. In half an hour, he could turn a hopeless patient with late-stage leukemia back into the early to mid-stage stage. It proves that he is really good at dealing with this disease. But Suyi said that he could cure all diseases and prolong life. He seemed a bit too much like a charlatan, so he couldn't believe it. He hesitated for a while, wondering whether he should let Suyi take medicine. When his sister Shen Mingyu heard this, she even said bluntly, "The hospital is divided into various departments. What medicine can cure all diseases and even prolong life?" This charming beauty frowned and her eyes were full of distrust. All he had to do was write the words, "You charlatan," on his forehead. That's why I said, you have to believe me. If you don't believe me, it won't be cured. Suyi shrugged and ignored their suspicions. He wanted to save the little girl by more than just using the water of life. It would be easiest to just ask Yuling to use a more advanced healing technique. Outsiders would not be able to tell the reason even if they were watching from the side. They would just be inexplicable and the little girl's illness would be cured. But in this case, how can he sell his water of life to others? How to quickly make money and accumulate original capital? We have a professional medical laboratory under our name. If you don't mind, I hope that it can be tested before use. It will be cured soon. Shen Mingwen proposed a compromise. There's no need to go to such trouble, I know what you're afraid of. Su Yi shrugged, pulled out the cork, picked up the porcelain bottle and poured a sip into his mouth. I killed a third of it directly, and the remaining little bit was probably just enough to treat the little girl. In fact, ever since Yu Ling talked about the effects of the water of life, he had already drank some of it himself. After drinking it, my skin has indeed improved a lot, and some minor ailments that were not painful or itchy before, such as mild myopia, rhinitis, etc., have also been cured. Other than that, I don't really feel anything. In this regard, Yu Ling's explanation was that he was now in his 20s, the age when one's energy is at its peak and most vigorous, and he was free from illness and disaster. It is normal to not feel anything special about drinking a small amount of eau de vie. After drinking this dose of water of life, the most obvious physical sensation should be the elderly and patients. Well, don't worry about whether it is useful or not, but it must be non-toxic. Su Yi put the porcelain bottle on the table and wiped the corners of his mouth. This is the only amount of this special medicine I can provide in a short period of time. If you believe it, use it. If you don't believe it, I'll drink it all in front of you. It won't be a problem. Mr. Su, have you thought about it? Even if you cannot eradicate Yingying's disease, I will not take back the things I gave you before, let alone hold you responsible for other responsibilities. Shen Mingwen confirmed again. To put it bluntly, it is to remind Su Yi that if he is not sure, he can just say it directly, and there is no need to pretend to be fat because he is afraid of the Shen family's retaliation. Since I said it can be cured, then it can be cured. If it can't be cured, I'll be here and let you do whatever you want. Su Yixin said. He had tried this thing himself, and he really didn't feel there was anything very magical about it. But he has not been in good spirits these past 2 days, which is enough to explain a lot of problems. Okay, then I will believe you again. After everything is done, the 500 million promised to you will remain unchanged, and an additional 200 million will be added as a reward for purchasing your bottle of magic medicine. Shen Mingwen was also a decisive person. After speaking, he picked up the porcelain bottle and walked into the room. Shen Mingyu behind him moved his lips slightly, but in the end he didn't say much. She also knew about Shen Yingying's condition. Although she didn't trust Su Yi, who looked a bit like a charlatan, she couldn't fake the fact that a large number of cancer cells in Shen Yingying's body disappeared out of thin air a few days ago. Therefore, even though I still don't believe it in my heart, I can't help but feel a glimmer of hope. What if? As for the old man of the Shen family, he never spoke a word from the beginning to the end. After Shen Mingwen went in with the bottle of medicine, he said to Su Yi intentionally or unintentionally. Young man, can this medicine really cure all diseases and prolong life? Whether it's true or not, we'll find out later. Su Yi replied politely. When the old man saw his confident look, a glimmer of light appeared in his muddy old eyes, and he said in a deep voice. Can you make similar medicine? It's okay, but the output is definitely very low. It's not profitable to do this, so I might as well run my business well. Su Yi was embarrassed. How can you not make money? The old man immediately became energetic. In this way, if your medicine is really effective, I will ask Mingwen to invest another 1 billion in you to open a medical company. You don't have to give us the Shen family shares. Just ensure that the 4 of us in the family are supplied with medicine when they need it. You can. What do you think? As for the extra medicine, it doesn't matter if the output is small. We can sell it more expensively. As long as your medicine is effective, the old man and I have quite a few connections. If those old immortals know that this is a good thing, you will be indispensable. Quote. The old man looks to be at least 70 years old, but he is actually in good spirits, and you can tell at a glance that he takes good care of himself. However, such a big man obviously still hasn't lived enough. When he heard Su Yi said that this thing of his could extend his life, the old man wanted to try it. But at first I didn't know whether what Su Yi said was true or false. Secondly, his granddaughter needs this medicine more now. If there are more medicines, he certainly hopes that he can live longer, but if this is the only one, he will naturally not snatch his granddaughter's life-saving medicine. Now that Su Yi said that this thing can still be made, he naturally became energetic. Whatever is difficult or not, isn't it just a matter of money? In his opinion, if Su Yi's medicine really has such an effect, let alone money, even if he wants certain rights, it will definitely not be a problem. Thank you, old man, for your support. Let's take a look. Su Yi pointed to the door with a smile. Shen Mingwen is not an indecisive person. Since he has already gone in with the medicine, it probably won't take too long. But this time it was a bit beyond Su Yi's expectation. They waited downstairs for more than half an hour before Shen Mingwen came downstairs. There was also a cute little girl in her arms. It was Shen Yingying. When Su Yi saw this girl for the first time, he thought she looked very bad. After Yu Ling used a healing technique on her that night, the little girl's face became visibly rosier and she became a little more angry. But at that time, she still didn't look as good as a normal child at this age. Until now, Shen Yingying was held in Shen Mingwen's arms, her face was rosy and her eyes were bright. It's really rare for anyone to come and praise the beautiful porcelain doll. It is completely unimaginable that just a few days ago, this was a cancer patient who was almost sentenced to death by the hospital. If complexion is too mysterious, it doesn't seem so intuitive. Then her long black hair, which is combed into braids, is so recognizable. Because of long-term chemotherapy, Shen Yingying had no hair on her head before. And now this long black and smooth hair is almost longer than her. Anyone with a discerning eye will know at a glance that it cannot be a wig. How's the effect? The most excited person at this time was the old man of the Shen family, who saw Shen Mingwen coming out with his child in his arms. Even though he had already guessed it when he saw Shen Yingying's appearance, he still couldn't help but ask. The effect is very good. Great. Shen Mingwen, a man in his 30s or 40s, his voice was choked up at this time. After answering the old father's question, he walked up to Su Yi and said gratefully, "Thank you, Mr. Su, for saving Yingying's life. I, Shen Mingwen, owe you a huge favor. If you have any use in the future, just come to my place and say hello. As long as I can do it, I will never refuse. Take people's money to eliminate disasters with them. It's not a matter of human nature." Su Yi waved his hand. "People have already given you a lot, so there is no need to be greedy. I'll call right now and have someone transfer the money to your company account right away." After Shen Mingwen said that, he didn't forget to say to the little girl in his arms, "Yingying, it was this uncle who saved your life. Thank you, uncle." The little girl was not afraid of life, so she said crisply when she heard this, "Thank you, uncle, and thank you, auntie." The aunt at the back naturally refers to Yu Ling, who has been following Su Yi. Others don't know, but this little girl knows very well that it was this aunt who made her suddenly feel very comfortable that night. It was then that she heard from her father that her condition had improved a lot. She told Shen Mingwen about this, and Shen Mingwen only thought that Yu Ling was Su Yi's assistant. The little girl mistook the assistant for the real owner and didn't care. Su Yi shook his head and said nothing, but Yu Ling gently squeezed Su Yi's hand after hearing the little girl's thanks. After receiving Su Yi's approval, he smiled and said, "You're welcome. Auntie hopes that when you grow up, you will become a wise man who combines wisdom and beauty, and will be healthy all your life." As he spoke, his fingers gently brushed her forehead, and finally pinched her baby fat cheeks. The fingertips flashed, and no one noticed. The elves are all about appearance. She thought the little girl was cute, so she planned to give her some gifts. Su Yi naturally had no objection. Shen Mingwen quickly finished the phone call, and not long after, Su Yi also received a reminder from the company's account. There was originally 100 million Tianyu holdings in the account, but in the blink of an eye the balance became 800 million. After the money and goods were settled, at least in Su Yi's case, the two parties no longer owed each other anything. After finishing all this, the old man of the Shen family also brought up what he just said in a timely manner. After Shen Mingwen heard this and confirmed that the medicine Su Yi just now could really be recreated, he immediately agreed to the old man's matter. He immediately said that he could mobilize funds within 3 days and continue to invest another billion in Su Yi, and he did not expect to get any shares from the pharmaceutical company. "I just hope that, as Mr. Shen said, the special medicine produced by Su Yi can supply their family of 4. That is, the old man of the Shen family, Shen Mingwen, Shen Mingyu, brother and sister, and the third generation Shen Yingying. 1 billion was just such a small request, so Suyi naturally had no reason not to agree. After the two parties agreed verbally, they planned to wait 3 days for the funds to be allocated before making a decision. This can be regarded as a buffer time left by the Shen family for themselves. Although Shen Yingying had taken half a bottle of medicine, she now looked extremely healthy. Even her hair had incredibly grown so long in half an hour. It's almost no different from a miracle. But without going to the hospital for comprehensive examinations, they still couldn't believe that cancer could be cured so quickly. So even though I believed 90% of it, I still couldn't help but keep a little room. Suyi didn't think it was anything. If people really believe him without any brains and don't even do a physical examination, then there is something wrong. When I came out of Shen's house, it was already around 11 o'clock in the evening. The procedures at the villa are almost complete, and even the property rights certificate has been properly completed for Su Yu. But this villa is said to be fully decorated and ready to move in, but in fact it is not so fast. The real estate agent there has been organizing people to clean the inside and outside of the long-standing villa in the past 2 days. Then check whether there are any abnormalities in the internal facilities of the house such as circuits, natural gas pipelines, water pipes, etc. if they have been out of service for a long time. Only after all cleaning and inspections are completed can Suyi move in. This won't take long, and the real estate companies in the villa area are quite experienced in this. Suyi will be able to move in by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. So he still has to stay in the hotel tonight. This is a suburb, and there are no good star hotels. After searching for a few times, I found an esports hotel that looked pretty good. And there is only one double gaming room left. What else can we do? Let's sleep in the same room. Fortunately, Yu Ling is very addicted to the internet, and it seems that it doesn't matter whether she sleeps in separate rooms or not. She didn't sleep anyway and spent the whole night playing games. When Suyi woke up the next morning, Yu Ling was still sitting on the edge of the bed playing games. Nowadays, the games she plays are no longer limited to simple things like Tetris and Shaola. She has actually started playing Peace Elite. And after being able to speak, he frequently communicated verbally with his teammates. That's Cuckoo's top score. Suyi didn't know why she was such an elf princess, but her style suddenly changed like this. But he didn't mean to disturb her, so he just watched her play quietly. Yu Ling knew that he was awake, but she was very rude. Dang even adjusted her position on the bed, put her head on Suyi's arm, and leaned in his arms, focusing on playing games on the phone screen. Suyi, no, what are you doing this early in the morning? This is the time of day when all men have the strongest yang energy. Do you use this to test cadres? Which cadre can withstand such a test? Do you really not understand this, or do you pretend not to understand it? Suyi held her waist and whispered in her ear. Yu Ling didn't take it seriously and said while playing the game. I am an elf princess and received royal education since childhood. Quote. Suyi was stunned for a moment. So what? There are many descendants of the royal family, and I am not the only princess. Because of the appearance of our elves, many races or countries will ask for marriage after establishing a certain relationship with us. Most of the time, the princess of the royal family is actually just a tool for marriage. As one of the tools, I have naturally received relevant education. Yu Ling gave him a blank look. You don't really think that I don't even know anything about things between men and women? White Lotus, is that the word? So what do you mean now? Suyi held her slender waist tighter. Yu Ling didn't say anything, just playing the game. If you don't speak, it is of course the default. Facts have proved that although Yu Ling was born in the royal family, he has systematically learned these things, and his theory can be said to be perfect. But there is indeed no actual combat experience. After trying the taste of elves, Suyi finally understood why in so many film and television entertainment works, elves were portrayed as heirlooms that all races wanted. Not only is this beautiful, but it also has a special flavor when you understand it in depth. Who can not love this? The whole morning, Suyi didn't even leave the door, and just passed by without shame. When he went out at noon, even though he had drank the water of life and was as strong as an ox, he couldn't bear it and almost had to hold on to the wall. Yu Ling, on the other hand, still acted like a normal person. There is no way, after all, he is some kind of knight from their world, a fierce man who can take the heads of enemy generals from an army of millions like picking out objects from a bag. No matter what, I won't be really tired because of this little thing. While eating, Su Yi suddenly remembered something. By the way, is there reproductive isolation between humans and elves? Can they just have children? Yu Ling, who was eating, was stunned for a moment, then rolled her eyes at him and said, "Now I know I'm afraid. Don't worry, I know magic. I can prevent pregnancy as long as I don't want to." Afraid, I'm scared. Su Yi suddenly became unhappy when he heard this. You don't even look at how much money is in my account. Let alone 1 or 2 children, I won't be afraid even if you give birth to 10 or 8 children. Others are afraid that their girlfriends will get pregnant because they are under great pressure to survive in modern society, and they are too busy working to support themselves every day. If you suddenly have a girlfriend without taking safety measures, then you not only have to support yourself, but you also have to support your pregnant wife and the child who is about to be born. What is the difference between this and the sky falling? They say loan sharking, mortgages, and family inheritance should never be touched. But compared with the last one, loan sharking can be considered to have low interest rates. Who dares to have children these days without some financial resources? But Su Yi doesn't have these problems now. If you really have to fight hard all morning and get hit, then let's die. What a big deal. Yu Ling did not refute what she said. She has now learned the language of this world, and has gained some understanding of the world as she can obtain a large amount of information through online channels. Knowing that Su Yi is not bragging, with his current financial resources, many things that ordinary people dare not touch are nothing to him. There is no reproductive isolation between humans and elves, but if there is no external interference, it will be more difficult for both parties to get pregnant than between normal humans and elves, and between elves and elves. However, children born from this kind of mixed blood will not have any defects. Instead, they have a high probability of inheriting the common advantages of both parties. Children born from mixed blood between humans and elves can often inherit the beauty of elves and even be more beautiful. He can also inherit human intelligence and agility, as well as better cultivation talents. Well, I forgot to tell you that in our world, humans are recognized as the most intelligent and agile race, and they are also the most powerful race at present. Among all races, humans are also the fastest in practicing martial arts and magic. Quote, "The fact that humans on your side can create so many magical items in just a few thousand years also illustrates this point. Mixed-race people have such a big advantage." Su Yi couldn't help but feel a little excited when he heard this. He glanced at Yu Ling's flat belly and wondered if he should try making one. However, Yu Ling turned around and said, "But these mixed-race children did not live well in our world. We pay attention to blood there, and neither humans nor elves are willing to accept these special mixed-race descendants. Although they have amazing talents and outstanding looks, they are after all if minority groups cannot be accepted by the mainstream, they will not be able to obtain resources. And these mixed race groups will not exist for a long time. Even if they intermarry within them, after several generations of changes, they will gradually begin to return to their ancestors, leaning towards one side of humans or elves, and eventually fully integrate into the two races. This also leads to the fact that this special group has no continuity, cannot form a new ethnic group, and naturally has no competitiveness. So they usually have a miserable life." Su Yi was speechless after listening. How about feudalism? It's outrageous that people who are good-looking, smart, and talented are rejected by two mainstream groups instead of competing to be absorbed by them. In our world, bloodline is very important. This can probably be traced back to where each race originally came from. Maintaining bloodline is the consensus of all races. Yu Ling shrugged. The dark elves who overthrew the rule of our elven kingdom also have extremely noble blood among the elves. Otherwise, no matter how hard our royal family tries to commit suicide and how much we destroy the lives of the people who govern the world, it will never be possible for the country to subjugate. Because neither the other powerful tribes of elves, nor the top leaders of humans or other races will allow a coalition composed of elves of lowly blood to violently overthrow the royal family of the moon elves with noble blood. But they also have dark elves of noble blood can. The bloodline theory is actually one of the important reasons why our moon elves subjugated our country. Because of the existence of this thing, we usually have almost no sense of crisis. That's why we were defeated by the Dark Elves with all the advantages. No matter how many countries and races in the world can regard the theory of blood as the foundation of their country, Suyi thinks it's a bit outrageous. But if you think about it carefully, it seems quite reasonable. After all, according to Yu Ling, the Blazing Sun Empire where Wei Wei lives has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. This is much more outrageous than Blue Star, which has no lineage theory. He didn't believe that this kind of feudal dynasty had a wise king and no weak king for hundreds of thousands of years. That's obviously impossible, and being able to last for such a long time obviously relies on the tacit understanding of bloodline among the high-level nobles in the world. They tacitly reject all people who may reach high positions but do not have noble blood. When the basic interest base of bloodline is touched, they will put aside their prejudices and unite to deal with the outside world. I have to say, it's quite magical. It is indeed a world where extraordinary power exists. Seeing that the topic became more and more biased, Suyi quickly brought it back. So why don't you give me a mixed-race baby and come out and see? Yu Ling blinked her big eyes when she heard this and smiled. As long as you want, of course I can. By the way, the gestation period of an elf is usually about 3 years, and sometimes it may reach 4 years. You can't touch me during this period. As she said that, her water-like eyes blinked at Suyi. That look doesn't look like an elf, it's like a succubus. Chapter 31. Ahem, forget it then. He hasn't had enough of elves yet. I don't want my happy life that has just begun to be interrupted just because of my little curiosity. If you keep such a beautiful wife by your side and cannot touch her for 3 or 4 years, how can you become a living eunuch? Don't say anything about going out to pick some wild flowers or something. Where in the entire Blue Star is there a flower that is more fragrant than this one? Nothing better. Thinking of this, he decisively changed the topic. By the way, those mixed humans and elves you mentioned are not welcome in your world. Do you think it's feasible to bring them to Blue Star? If I remember correctly, you need to use points to buy trading cards when trading people to Blue Star, right? Yu Ling was a little surprised. Didn't you say that? They are beautiful, smart, and very talented. There must be no shortage of strong and smart people in such a group, right? Suyi asked back. Indeed, although compared with the 2 large groups of elves and humans, their power is very small, but if you really want to calculate it according to the average, the strength of these mixed-race people is definitely better than the same number of elves and humans. This is still lacking. Resources provide the results of their cultivation. As far as I know, the strongest person in this group is a hybrid named Star Prayer. His strength has entered the ranks of legendary strongmen many years ago. If he goes one step further, he will become a god of war. She is also a very famous wise person in our world. If you can really successfully bring them all to Blue Star, you will definitely get a lot of good help. They have been ostracized for a long time, and a person like you suddenly appeared who is willing to accept them. I am afraid they will also be loyal to you, coupled with the constraints of the trading platform, and this matter is very harmful to Wei. As far as Wei is concerned, there is nothing to lose. Mixed-race people are originally beneficial to groups that live in the cracks between all races. They are a force that she cannot use. Giving them to you can also be exchanged for a batch of resources. Quote, what you have to do is think about how to obtain so many life trading rights and convince the leaders of the mixed-race group. Yu Ling analyzed it carefully and felt that Suyi's sudden request was indeed feasible. But no matter how you look at it, it can only be a long-term plan and it will be difficult to realize it in a short time. After all, this mixed-race group is a niche in their world, compared to the big races such as elves and humans. The real number is not much at all. A conservative estimate would probably be in the millions. If he wants to bring them all to Blue Star and hopes to get a 10-point Junior Life Trading Authority card, Suyi will have to save points until the end of the Year of the Monkey. If you want to achieve this goal, you can either wait until the membership level increases in the future to see if new permissions will be unlocked, or see if in addition to the basic props in the points mall, there will be some special props with greater permissions. Otherwise it is just a fantasy. But it's still good as a backup target. Everyone on Blue Star has their own little thoughts, and it is difficult for Suyi to fully trust them. But these visitors from other worlds are different. It's not that they don't have some thoughts, that's for sure. But unlike the Blue Star natives, these people had experienced the trading platform and the contract was clearly written in black and white. They were bound by the power of the trading platform, so Suyi didn't have to worry about their betrayal. As long as there is no betrayal, everything else is easy to talk about. Just after lunch, Suyi received a call from Zhou Yan. He said that all relevant procedures for Tianyu Holdings and Tianyu Farm were ready, and asked him if he wanted to choose a good and auspicious day to cut the ribbon and start construction. Suyi didn't believe this, and directly said that it was better to choose a day than to hit it. Keep everything simple and just start work today. As a professional manager, Zhou Yan has worked for many big bosses in the past. The obsession with metaphysics among wealthy people is clear. Not to mention such a big event as the opening of the entire group, some real estate developers have to make the scene look like a religious ceremony when starting digging. Then the foundation of the building has to be laid and it has to be done again, and the building has to be topped. If anything happens in the middle, continue to do it a few more times. The question is whether you would rather believe that it exists or not. He's almost used to it. I have a bunch of contact information for various professional Taoist priests and monks in my hand. I didn't expect to meet a boss who didn't believe in this, which was unusual. Suyi didn't care so much. Even though he had truly come into contact with the extraordinary power of magic, he still didn't believe in the things of metaphysics. He once saw someone asking a question on the internet. The question was if the technological civilization and the immortal civilization collided head-on and started a war, which side would win in the end? One of the answers impressed him deeply and he believed deeply. If you think the opponent is cultivating immortality, then you will definitely lose. To put it bluntly, it doesn't matter whether it's technology, cultivation, or magic. Essentially, it's just different ways of utilizing different energies. After all, there are traces to follow. If you really think that people's cultivation of immortality has no scientific basis at all and relies entirely on metaphysics, with no trace at all, then you should be fooled and invest as soon as possible. So now someone came and told him that someone in Blue Star was cultivating immortality, and he believed it. But I can't trust those swindling monks and Taoists. In Yu Ling's world, the so-called Dharma gods and martial gods were, to put it bluntly, powerful humans or other races. It has nothing to do with those mysterious gods in myths and legends. When Suyi rushed to the farm, which had been suspended for a few days due to integration, just resumed work under Zhou Yan's arrangement. This season is when some fruits and vegetables are produced on the farm. They have not been picked for several days, and many mature fruits and vegetables have become too old or have fallen to the ground overripe. The loss was a lot, but it was only a small amount of money to Suyi now, so he didn't care. After a round of inspection, Zhou Yan, who was meeting him for the first time, respectfully invited him to the chairman's office. The time is too short, and there is no time to build a headquarters building or something. The office space is still the simple office building of Yuanfang Farm. After entering, Zhou Yan handed Suyi a list of names. A list of layoffs. The current Yuanfang Farm is the integration of several previous farms, and naturally many of its departments overlap. After the integration, there were a lot of redundant personnel, and naturally a number of them had to be laid off. This was something Zhou Yan had an issue with Suyi before. The layoff list is also in full compliance with Suyi's requirements. Needless to say, those related households who were working in unimportant positions on various farms will be abolished. Their relationship was with their previous boss, and they had nothing to do with Suyi. Of course, he would not be merciless when it came to cutting them off. In addition to related households, those departments are not so important but overlap. Cut based on their work records during the original farm period. It is enough to keep only one department of the same type, and all other departments of the same type in the farm will be abolished. Among the redundant departments that have been eliminated, those who do serious work can stay and arrange for similar departments that have been retained. When only one department of the same type is retained in the original farm, facing the sudden expansion of the farm, the original department's manpower is obviously not enough. This can also increase manpower and reduce the workload. Of course, all the above layoffs are only for the marketing, management and other office-based departments. For the larger number of farm workers, Suyi meant that they would not be laid off and should be retained. These are the people working on the front line of the farm. To put it bluntly, they are basically honest farmers from nearby villages. The average age is upwards of 40. Most people come here to work to support their families, and they all come from farming backgrounds, so they usually don't get lazy when doing things. Although the farm's employees were now somewhat redundant, Suyi thought about it again and still had no intention of laying them off. First, unlike those employees who work in offices, for many farm employees, they really don't know what to do if they lose their jobs. Although Suyi didn't intend to help the world, he still hadn't reached the point of grabbing a few taels of silver from these poor people digging in the fields. And these redundant farmers may not be left to make a living. If we really want to introduce and plant those magical plants, we will definitely have to cultivate them intensively due to lack of experience in the early stage. Yu Ling couldn't have so much time. Suyi would not let her deal with these magical plants in the fields under the scorching sun every day. It is a good idea to let these experienced farmers take care of these crops. By then, these redundant farmers on the farm may not be enough. Secondly, it was out of stability considerations and I didn't want to cause too much trouble and cause a scandal. Suyi's current situation is that he is not afraid of dragons crossing the river, but afraid of local snakes. With Yu Ling here, he wouldn't be afraid of being targeted by some big shot if he came up with something shocking. He doesn't recognize any powerful people, and he will make anyone who dares to quarrel with him disappear from this world. At any time, physically annihilating people is the most deterrent. There is no one in this world who is not afraid of death. And Yu Ling happens to have the strength to kill anyone in Blue Star. Therefore, the big shot Suyi is not afraid, but if he encounters a local snake, it will be like a toad crawling on his feet. If he doesn't bite, he will be disgusting. He himself was born in a rural area, so he naturally understands the simplicity and hard work of rural people. But I also understand the rudeness in the countryside. The employees on the farm were all from nearby villages. He knew without even thinking that if he laid off a large number of employees today, no matter how good his reasons were or how generous the dismissal subsidies were. Don't even think about the future of this farm. If this happens, he can't let Yu Ling kill everyone. This is his personal bodyguard and little wife, not a murderer. So in order to prevent these unnecessary troubles, and in addition, he did have things at hand that needed these farm workers who knew a lot about farm work to do it. It's better to keep too many people for the time being. Of course, since you stay, your treatment will naturally change. In the past, the wages paid to these employees on the farm were 4,000 to 5,000 a month. It sounds like a lot, but compared with their workload and work intensity, this salary is completely insufficient. Suyi plans to increase the salary of the remaining employees. The increase is not much, which is double their original salary. 8,000 a month. And the messy contracts they originally signed also need to be changed into serious contracts that comply with laws and regulations. Strictly implement the 8-hour work system, 5 days off and 2 days off, and pay 5 insurances and 1 fund. The company provides food and accommodation, but since no formal dormitories have been built yet, employees can rent out their own rooms, and take the rental contract to the company's finance department to reimburse the rent. The monthly rent can be reimbursed within 1,000, and the excess will be levied on the employee. Posted it myself. According to Suyi's understanding, in this area on the edge of Zhongcheng, you can already rent a very good house at this price. For those locals who don't need to rent a house, he doesn't need to think about it to know that there will definitely be people renting their own houses to defraud the rent subsidy, but he doesn't care, it is all a welfare for them. In addition, there are various benefits, such as afternoon tea and midnight snack subsidies. The welfare level is close to that of those major internet companies. After all, as the boss, even if he can't get those magic crops, he can just develop the farm as a normal one. If you provide benefits to employees in this way, they will basically not lose money. And since the magic plants from other worlds allow him to quickly harvest the wealth of the rich, he naturally doesn't mind giving more money to his employees. From the beginning to the end, he had no intention of exploiting these poor people. His target had always been those extremely wealthy people. Suyi didn't have the idea of benefiting the world, but he still had the awareness to make the people who followed him live a better life. Of course, he doesn't think that just because he gives his employees wages and benefits that far exceed those of his peers will make everyone obey him. There will always be a small group of people who, after receiving benefits, think they are kind-hearted and will want more, and will make trouble if they don't give it. But this will only be a very small group. If they really want to cause trouble, Suyi will not even need to do anything. Those employees who have benefited from working with him will spontaneously come out to defend him. Let the number of people with vested interests increase, and a few greedy people will naturally not be able to make waves. Looking at the new version of the employee welfare system that had been modified by Suyi himself, Zhou Yan couldn't help but take a deep breath, and after holding it in for a long time, he couldn't help but sigh. You are really the most generous boss I have ever seen. It's just a small amount of money. This is just the treatment for the most basic employees of the farm. For the welfare benefits of other departments, you can make a corresponding table according to this standard and show it to me. Don't worry about spending money. How much money can be paid out by paying wages? Suyi said casually. Zhou Yan naturally had no reason to refuse and quickly agreed. After giving these instructions, Suyi looked at him with interest and said, Mr. Zhou is very capable and has done a very good job these days. I wonder what position you hold in the Shen family. Zhou Yan was stunned for a moment, then reacted immediately and said quickly. Director Su misunderstood. I was temporarily hired by Mr. Shen to handle these matters. After the employment ended, I didn't have much to do with the Shen family. I would like to ask you to be the general manager of Tianyu Farm. I wonder if you are interested. Suyi said with a smile. It's my wish, but I dare not ask you to listen. Dong Su is serious. Zhou Yan's eyes flashed with joy and he said quickly. Although letting him be a farm general manager is a bit of a waste of his abilities. But he knew very well that the young man in front of him now had a cash flow of nearly 1 billion in the account of another company, Tianyu Holdings. What is this concept? Many large companies with a market value of tens of billions or even tens of billions after listing may not be able to spend billions anytime and anywhere. And Tianyu Holdings can. With his eyes, it is not difficult to see that Suyi wants to build Tianyu Holdings into a huge group. If it succeeds and he joins now, he will be a veteran in the future. After seeing Suyi's financial resources and ambition, he had to do this kind of thing even if he didn't get paid. Not to mention that Suyi is so generous to those employees at the lowest level, how can he lose the benefit of him as the general manager? Suyi doesn't have time to deal with these things on the farm. So he needs a tool man to help him deal with it. Zhou Yan is obviously a good choice. As for whether this tool man is loyal or not, it actually doesn't matter. He holds the greatest power in his hands, and the profit and loss of the farm itself is not actually his biggest concern. Running a farm is just something that happens when he obtains large quantities of grain and other goods reasonably and legally. He can make the best profit, and it doesn't matter if he loses. If you lose money, just change to a professional manager. As for the final destination of these things obtained through the farm, it was difficult to hide it from the tool man, but Suyi had many ways to prevent him from telling such things. Even if Zhou Yan is really a spy sent by someone, he will not risk his life. It's only a few dollars a month, so why bother? What's more, no one actually has the motive to bribe Zhou Yan to be the mole. The Shen family does have a little motive, and they are definitely capable, but the relationship between Suyi and the Shen family is not bad at present, and they have just established contact. He felt that if the Shen family had nothing wrong with their minds, they would not offend him now. I personally finalized the welfare issues and appointed a person in charge. Suyi had no intention of caring about the farm anymore. Before leaving, he just told Zhou Yan that he should choose some land with better conditions in the near future and leave it without planting any crops. He would try to plant a batch of special new crops, but he did not say what he wanted to plant. Although Zhou Yan was confused, the big boss had already spoken, so he naturally had no objection. Anyway, if the things grown in these fields fail to survive, the money lost will not be borne by him. After arranging everything here, it's evening again. Yu Ling followed him as a decoration for a whole day. She followed Suyi no matter what he did and never said a word to outsiders. When it was time to have dinner, he took the initiative and suggested, "How about we go here to eat tonight?" As he spoke, he took out his mobile phone, opened a certain video software, and found an advertisement for a restaurant from his collection. Su Yi glanced at it. It was a restaurant similar to ancient palace banquets. The per capita consumption was not high. In addition to food, there were some singing and dancing performances. In order to blend into the environment and gain a sense of immersion, guests will even be provided with some period costumes. Of course, he agreed without thinking. When it comes to eating, he doesn't have any requirements for what he eats, as long as it doesn't taste bad. Beaten per capita, never too unpalatable. Moreover, he had bought so many clothes for Yu Ling, but he had never bought any costumes. He also wanted to see what Yu Ling would look like wearing them. If the effect is good, you can give her more treatment later. Wait. As soon as he agreed, Su Yi realized another thing. Don't you always follow me after you go out today? When was this video posted? It's daytime. Yu Ling blinked. There is a magic called the Eye of Insight that allows me to see where I want to see. After I use this magic on the phone screen, I can see the content on the phone. With another little magic, I can also control the phone from the air. Su Yi, so you seem to be standing behind me and saying nothing during the day, but you are actually watching short videos. Good guy, what kind of magical skill is this? Yes, but don't worry, most of my energy is focused on safety. I can react to anything that happens. Yu Ling did not hide anything. Ah, okay, if you want to fish, just fish. Who can let people do two things at once? The place to eat is quite far from this suburb, and it takes nearly half an hour to drive there. This kind of restaurant sells not only food, but also service and performances. Of course, the charging method is different from that of ordinary restaurants. After Su Yi asked briefly, he bought the most expensive package ticket. Regardless of the food in it, the ticket included the front row seat and the ancient costumes provided by the hotel. This is what he came for, so of course he wanted to buy the most expensive one. Of course, it is said to be the most expensive, but the per capita consumption is only $1,000, which is a drop in the bucket for Su Yi now. The quality of the clothes provided here is of course not high, and the materials give people a cheap feel. But Yu Ling's perfect figure and face perfectly made up for this small flaw. After putting on the ancient costume, she looks like a lady walking out of a painting, making people fascinated at just one glance. Although Su Yi bought the same ticket, he did not wear these clothes. There is no such condition. These ancient costumes are completely unsuitable for modern men to wear. If you force it on your body, it will only look nondescript. With his appearance as a pretty boy without a beard and lack of scholarly temperament, and wearing a complete set of ancient costumes, some people might have thought that a eunuch had escaped somewhere. This is not his fault. Most men in modern times look like eunuchs wearing this kind of ancient costume. There is no way, who is a good person in ancient times who didn't grow a beard? It's so beautiful here. As soon as she entered the banquet hall, the decoration inside made this elf princess who had experienced a lot in other worlds unable to help but sigh. How do you say it? How does it compare with the elves or human palaces in your world? Yu Ling thought carefully and said, if we talk about grandeur, then this place is definitely not as good as the human palaces in the magical world. Not to mention those imperial palaces, even Wei Wei's palace in Mengchuan City is much more luxurious than this. The pillars in the main hall are all made of pure gold. Quote, if we want to talk about simplicity and elegance, then this place is definitely not as good as the palace of our elf kingdom. There are very few metal products in our palace. Most of them are made of special magic plants. Even the entire palace hall itself is a stone. The stump of the giant tree is hollowed out, and because our elves have a long lifespan, we are quite accomplished in art. Every sculpture and mural in the palace is a top-notch work of art in the magical world. Quote, but this place is different. In terms of magnificence, it is not as good as the human palaces in the magical world. In terms of exquisiteness and elegance, it is not as good as our elven palaces. But it takes into account the advantages of both, making it appear magnificent without being too vulgar. I understand, the humans over there are wealthy people, they wear gold and silver, and they like to decorate their palaces sparklingly. The elves are very particular and can make common things exquisite. Su Yi immediately nodded in approval. But the next moment, I realized something was wrong. Wait a minute, every pillar in Wei Wei's palace is made of pure gold. How big is the pillar? Yu Ling was stunned for a moment, as if she didn't expect that his topic would go so far, but she still quickly answered. I have only seen it a few times, but I have never measured it. It is probably less than 3 meters in diameter and more than 10 meters high. I am not sure about the size, but it is indeed pure gold. Sir, these are the appetizers. Please try them. The waiter in ancient costume and veil placed dishes of exquisite side dishes in front of Su Yi, but he was a little absent-minded, and all he could think about was what Yu Ling said just now. A pure gold pillar about 3 meters in diameter and more than 10 meters high. So there shouldn't be hundreds of cubic meters of gold. 1 cubic meter of gold weighs about 19 tons. 100 cubic meters, 1900 tons of gold. Less, the original offer was still too little. He never expected that Wei Wei would have so much gold. This was really outrageous. Is it possible that gold in your world can be seen everywhere? Su Yi asked doubtfully. Yu Ling, who was eating, thought for a while, nodded and said. Actually, it's not that common. It's very difficult for humans to mine gold. Races like dwarves and goblins who are good at mining actually don't produce much gold. But we have a race there called giant dragons. They are also an intelligent race. While they have extremely high intelligence, they also have almost the most powerful body in the world. This race loves shiny things very much, and gold is naturally one of them. 1. It is not difficult for various races to mine gold on the surface, but it is not difficult for them to obtain it. Most dragons are not afraid of fire. They will enter the extremely deep underground through the lava of volcanoes. It is said that there are various kinds of gold in the deep underground. Such gems and gold, that's where their gold comes from. Many powerful people in our world are very keen on slaying dragons, not because these giant dragons have done anything outrageous and resentful. Of course, there must be giant dragons who have done outrageous things, but most of the dragons targeted by dragon slayers have never done these things. This race has an extremely long lifespan, and they are usually Buddhist-like and sleep in their own caves most of the time. People are keen on slaying dragons. To put it bluntly, they covet the gold and gems that the dragons salvage from the ground. Yu Ling's words were unexpected by Su Yi. Isn't it right? It sounds like these dragons are still victims. The normal plot should not be that the dragon relies on its powerful physique and talent to do all kinds of evil, causing trouble for one party, robbing gold, silver, treasures and beautiful women, and then being killed by the dragon-slaying warrior who runs out of nowhere, and finally the dragon-slaying warrior embraces the beauty. Did you return and get a huge amount of treasure by the way? Now you say that the gold and silver treasures of the giant dragon were dug out of the volcano by himself as a miner. Those dragon-slaying warriors just killed people just to steal their treasures. Does this align with the core values of your wizarding world? Hearing Su Yi's question, Yu Ling was speechless and said, why does the giant dragon want human beauties? As for treasure, let alone humans, the wealth of all other races in the entire world combined is not as much as that of the giant dragon. When some powerful human empires need gold and silver treasures, they will enslave some giant dragons and let them go to the purgatory under the volcano to find gold and other treasures. After all, dragons are magical creatures that live alone. They don't even form a tribe, let alone a country. For our slightly larger race, it's not too difficult to kill a giant dragon. Boy, this is really miserable. The corner of Su Yi's mouth twitched, and he mourned for a few seconds for this giant dragon clan that sounded bluffing, but in fact could only be bullied, and then quickly said. I remember Wei Wei called herself a dragon slayer before, so she got all her gold from that dragon. With her strength, she can slay a dragon. If you are stronger than her, wouldn't it be a case of indiscriminate killing when you encounter a giant dragon? Yu Ling had a rare embarrassed look on her face. Not embarrassed for myself, but embarrassed for my best friend in the world next door. Actually, it was the sword master of the Blazing Sun Empire who killed the giant dragon. Wei Wei just went to watch. The reason why she was named the Dragon Slayer was mainly because of her special status. Got it, please type the title for me. Su Yi immediately nodded to express understanding. While the two were chatting, exquisitely plated dishes were served one after another by beautiful waiters in ancient costumes. The taste is average, not terrible, but certainly not amazing. This was not what Su Yi had expected. The main thing about eating in this kind of place is the atmosphere, and what you eat is secondary. It would be really weird if it tasted delicious. But halfway through the meal, Yu Ling, who was chatting with Su Yi, suddenly said, "There's a guy across from us who's been watching you. Look at me." Su Yi was stunned for a moment. "Looking at you? Yu Ling's appearance conditions are here. It is very normal for people to stare at her when she is out." And Su Yi himself, although his handsomeness far exceeds that of Peng Yuyan, and is comparable to readers. But what's so good about him as a man? Is she a beauty? It's a man. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. It's the one in white clothes in front of you on your right. Well, there's no need to look for him. He got up and came over. Su Yi followed Yu Ling's guidance and saw a young man wearing a moon-white scholar's robe getting up and walking over. However, this young man was not staring at him as Yu Ling said. His eyes were always on Yu Ling, but he would glance at Su Yi from time to time. Don't know what it means either. Su Yi narrowed his eyes and said nothing. He continued to deal with the dishes on the plate without paying much attention to him. Not long after, the young man came to the two of them. As expected, he did not speak to Su Yi directly, but said to Yu Ling very politely, "Beauty, you are so beautiful. Can you send me your price via WeChat? I have a boyfriend." Yu Ling glanced at him and refused without saltiness. "It doesn't matter, just be ordinary friends. It doesn't matter whether you have a boyfriend or not." The man was still minding his own business, as if he couldn't feel the rejection in Yu Ling's words, and at the same time he ignored Su Yi beside her. But the corner of his eye kept looking at Su Yi's expression. "I refuse." Yu Ling shook her head again. Brother, it would be rude to keep pestering you," Su Yi said lightly. "Is this your girlfriend? You are so lucky, brother." The man seemed to have noticed Su Yi's existence at this moment, and said with a smile, "Ask your girlfriend to add me on WeChat. I work in a media company. With her image, as long as she comes to our company, whether she takes the internet celebrity route or debuts as a star, she will definitely become popular. Brother, please don't delay her future. You disturbed our meal." Su Yi suddenly interrupted him. The chattering man was startled, then smiled and said, "So what?" Su Yi put the chopsticks on the table, wiped his mouth with a tissue without haste, and then smiled at him. "So, just go and die. Let him die far away and stop getting in my way." Of course, Su Yi said the last sentence to Yu Ling. In this regard, Yu Ling's answer was also very straightforward. Yes. The man was originally curious about what Su Yi was going to say, but when he heard this, he grinned and almost laughed. But just when he was about to retaliate, he suddenly felt that he had lost control of his body. The next moment, the man who was struggling at the table stood up like a puppet on strings, staggered away from the table in front of the two of them, returned to his own seat and sat down. Then, as if he had drunk too much, he fell down on the table. His face was directly buried in the dishes just served by the waiter, and there was no more movement. The female companion next to him thought he was guilty of something, and did not react for a moment when she saw this. After waiting for a while and seeing no movement from him, I carefully pushed him. "Master Jung, are you drunk? It's too noisy here. How about we find another place to rest? Master Jung, wake up. Ah, someone died." After pushing for a long time, when the young man still had no reaction, the woman forcibly helped him up. Then he saw the young man's pale face, his round eyes, and the blood that was constantly oozing from his mouth and nose. A scream interrupted the overwhelming sound in the palace banquet hall. The banquet hall, which was beautiful and harmonious a second ago, suddenly became chaotic. Not long after, accompanied by blasts of sirens, the ambulance arrived at the scene. After an examination, the doctor shook his head without even lifting the person into the car. He suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage and has been dead for a while. He cannot be saved. Let his family members notify the funeral home. This corpse is already hard, and it's still a hairy 120. Before the chaos occurred, Su Yi left with Yu Ling. On the way back to the hotel, Yu Ling couldn't help but said, "Did I get you into trouble?" "No." Su Yi shook his head and said, "Didn't you say that that man had been looking at me before he came? He was here to cause trouble, not because of you. There are many people who ask for contact information of beautiful women in public places, but after being explicitly rejected, it is less common to see a beautiful woman accompanied by her boyfriend and then stalk them. Not normal either. Of course, there are so many abnormal people, but this doesn't mean anything. But before coming, Yu Ling said that this person had been looking at Su Yi, not her. But after arriving, he deliberately struck up a conversation with Yu Ling in front of Su Yi. It can be seen that this was obviously provoking trouble. Deliberate provocation. Then who is he? Yu Ling asked curiously. I don't know, it's not important. Anyway, he has been killed. Who cares what the dead person was thinking or thinking? Su Yi shook his head. The topic ends here. Anyway, he didn't see how people died, so he definitely didn't have any psychological burden. As for Yu Ling, killing someone was nothing to her, so she didn't take it seriously. After returning to the hotel, the two of them naturally did some things that everyone loves to do. I didn't sleep until early in the morning. What Su Yi didn't know was that while he was sleeping, in a mansion somewhere in Zhongcheng, a woman with a bruised nose and swollen face was kneeling on the ground and saying something. If he were here, he could probably barely tell that this woman was the female companion of the man who was easily eliminated by Yu Ling. What she was talking about at this time was what happened in the palace banquet hall that night. Sitting in front of her were a middle-aged couple and a very old man. At this time, these people's faces were very ugly. The reason is naturally the death of his grandson. And the cause of death was very bizarre. After the doctor at the scene gave the death notice, the Jung family still didn't believe it was true and went to multiple hospitals for doctors to check. After confirming that there was really no hope of resuscitation, a specialized forensic doctor was called in for identification. The identification results were exactly the same as those doctors' diagnosis. Sudden cerebral hemorrhage, immediate death. There is no doubt about it. It's not poisoning, let alone an assassination. The Jung family had a great business, and there was far more than just this one son, but the deceased Jung Zie was the most favored youngest son. What's more, such a large family usually has a professional medical team to conduct physical examinations at fixed times. In the past, Jung Zie's biggest problem was kidney deficiency from playing with women too much. There are absolutely no signs of cardiovascular or cerebrovascular disease. Now that the person who suffered a sudden cerebral hemorrhage has died, how can this family accept it? At this moment, they brought over the female companion that Jung Zie had brought with them, and of course they wanted to ask clearly. The front was quite normal, Jung Zie was going shopping with his female companion, etc. But after talking about what happened in the banquet hall, the Jung family, who were about to accept that their child really died of natural causes, suddenly realized something was wrong. Who do you think the man and woman Zie mentioned? The girl who mechanically recounted her experiences during the day was stunned for a moment and said quickly. Master Jung said that the male of the couple is the Shen family's new dog. Since we met him by chance, let's go and give him some color. But later, for some unknown reason, there was no conflict between the two parties. Mr. Jung didn't say a word after he came back, and he fell on the table not long after. The Shen family. The Jung family looked at each other, and then the middle-aged man took out his mobile phone and rummaged through it, and found a photo. Is it this person? The girl took one look, nodded repeatedly and said. Yes, it's him. The person in the photo is clearly Su Yi. When the middle-aged man heard this, he immediately said to the old man beside him. Dad, this is the master of traditional Chinese medicine that the Shen family recently found from nowhere. It is said that his medical skills are very powerful, and he also has some particularly powerful prescriptions. The medicines he makes have many miraculous effects. The Shen family has kept a tight lid on this person's affairs. These information may not necessarily be accurate, and we have never obtained samples of these rumored miraculous drugs. It's hard to say what the specific effects will be. If this medicine is real, then it's normal that the doctors and forensic doctors can't find out what Su Yi did to Zie secretly. How about we go and invite him over first to ask him clearly? Speaking of this, a hint of ruthlessness appeared in the middle-aged man's eyes. After all, it was his son who died, so he naturally wanted to find the murderer immediately and cut his body into pieces. However, the old man sitting in the first place did not agree immediately. After pondering for a moment, he said, Since you are a member of the Shen family, then follow the rules of our society and there is no need to call the police or anything like that. Let someone notify the Shen family, and then send a few people to invite him back. Speaking of this, the old man's eyes flashed with an inexplicable light. Be careful when you invite people, don't hurt the doctor. After all, we are just suspicious now, and the person is not necessarily killed by others. Just invite the person over and ask clearly. Maybe we can become partners in the future. Su Yi, who was sleeping soundly, naturally didn't know, so they wanted to invite him over overnight to ask for clarification. When the people from the Jung family who came to invite him arrived at the hotel, the Shen family also received the news simultaneously. There is black and white in this world. The Shen family did half black and half white things, so the Jung family was naturally not clean either. Moreover, there was no evidence for Su Yi's suspicion, so they could only act in private. What do you mean? The Jung family's youngest son died, and they suspect Mr. Su did it. Yes, head of the family, the Jung family's statement is that Mr. Su was at the scene at the time. It is said that Mr. Su's medical skills are amazing, so I would like to ask him to go over and ask clearly. The bodyguard who spread the news said quickly. After being woken up in the middle of the night, Shen Mingwen suddenly became energetic and had no sleepiness at all. He was not surprised that the relationship between the Shen family and Su Yi was known to someone who was interested. It's just that he is very confident. At this stage, outsiders definitely don't know what the situation is between Su Yi and the Shen family, and how capable he is. It was precisely because of this that, in order to avoid alerting the enemy, no one was sent to protect Su Yi's safety. This will make him be targeted by interested people. I just didn't expect that such a coincidence would happen. Su Yi actually had a conflict with the Jung family, and a young son of the Jung family died as a result. The so-called cerebral hemorrhage, the Jung family members may still only guess that it was Su Yi's manipulation, but Shen Mingwen, who has seen what kind of medical skills Su Yi possesses, is already sure about it. It is estimated that Zheng Ziyeh offended Su Yi without knowing his life or death, and was killed by Su Yi using some secret method. But the fact that the Zheng family is looking for Mr. Su all night is probably not just because of Zheng Ziyeh's death. Shen Mingwen, who was experienced in the world of martial arts, already had some guesses and said to the bodyguard. Don't worry so much. Do you know where Mr. Su is? Hurry up and call a few people to protect Mr. Su's safety. You can't let anyone take him away. If it's convenient, bring him here. If the Zheng family obstructs it, just wait for me, past. The bodyguard immediately agreed. Although the Shen family has not sent anyone to keep an eye on Su Yi in the past 2 days, Zhongcheng is only so big, and it is not difficult for such a big family to keep track of Su Yi's movements. Soon a large number of bodyguards rushed to the hotel where Su Yi was staying. Dong dong dong. The large number of footsteps and rapid knocking at the door made Yu Ling, who was lying next to Su Yi and playing with her mobile phone, frown. The vague hostility of the people outside made her hands glow with a faint light. But after thinking about it, she still didn't take action immediately, but called Su Yi next to her. In fact, Su Yi doesn't have so many requirements for sleep now, and not sleeping for a day or two is nothing. The reason why I still ensure 8 hours of sleep every day is actually just a habit. After being woken up, his mind was very clear. After knowing that there were a large number of unidentified and somewhat hostile people outside, he understood that it was probably time to solve the boy's subsequent troubles during the day. Su Yi had offended not many people. He had previously guessed that this person either had a grudge against the Shen family, or the Shen family had an enmity with the other party when they helped him acquire those farms recently, so he deliberately came to cause trouble. Seeing that the revenge comes so quickly, there is no need to guess anymore. The bosses behind the farms that were acquired by the Shen family through unknown means definitely did not have such means, let alone the courage. The boy who was dealt with by Yu Ling's magic was probably an enemy of the Shen family. He felt helpless at the thought of being involved in this kind of struggle between forces. But there is nothing we can do about it. Any benefit comes with risks. He chose to start from a wealthy family like the Shen family to develop his career, so it was inevitable that he would encounter such a thing. The response method is not that complicated. The soldiers will come to block the water and come to the soil. Since they didn't choose to call the police or deal with him through official channels, there was no need for him. After all, Yu Ling's identity is special and it is not appropriate to reveal it now. I think they are here to invite us. Since they are already here, let's take a walk with them. Su Yi can probably guess what the other person is thinking. If they were really here for revenge, they would probably have broken in directly by now. Since he was still knocking on the door politely, it meant that the other party did not believe that Su Yi was the murderer of that kid, but just wanted to use the topic as a pretext. As for the purpose, Su Yi couldn't guess it. Maybe it was to discuss the Shen family, or maybe because he knew about the water of life he displayed at the Shen family, and wanted to take the opportunity to bypass the Shen family and get a piece of the pie. Who knows? But he didn't care either. Just like when he faced the young man during the day, he didn't care what the dead man was thinking or what his purpose was. "Are you Mr. Su?" Outside the door, a rather cold-looking man in a suit looked at Su Yi indifferently. "It's me. Is there something going on in the middle of the night?" Su Yi said lightly. "I am from the Jung family. Our head wants to ask you something in person. Could you please Mr. Su to come with us?" The bodyguard's expression was cold and hard, and his muscles were tense when he spoke. Whenever Su Yi dared to say no, he would immediately take action and take the person away by force. However, to his surprise, Su Yi seemed not surprised at all and immediately said, "Can." As he spoke, he glanced into the room and urged, "Have you changed your clothes? It's time to leave." "All right." Looking at Su Yi, who looked casual, and Yu Ling, who had put on clothes and walked out of the room in a hurry, the bodyguard looked a little confused for a moment. "No, I came to tie you up in the middle of the night. Are you not nervous at all?" Helping the Jung family with errands, this was not the first time he had broken into someone else's house in the middle of the night and kidnapped someone. Although this time they knocked on the door first instead of breaking in directly, there was essentially no difference. This is the first time he has met a client who is so willing to cooperate with his work. Originally, he thought that Su Yi-jun was trying to be cowardly and have some evil intentions, but he didn't expect that Su Yi-jun was just going to visit a friend. After taking Yu Ling into the car, they had no intention of running away. Instead, they paid attention to the riding experience of the car. After the two of them discussed it seriously for a while, they said that they would buy one later. The extremely vigilant bodyguard was speechless. What made him even more speechless was that while chatting, Su Yi actually started chatting with him. They all asked boring questions such as, "How old are you this year? How many people are in the family? How old are the children? Do you have a wife? How much is your monthly salary?" Seeing how cooperative the bodyguard was, in order to avoid trouble, he answered Su Yi's questions simply. He would answer whatever Su Yi asked. "A monthly salary of 30,000. That's really not low." Su Yi affirmed the monthly salary of the bodyguard. After some questioning, he already knew that behind this group of people was a force called the Jung family. The young man who died of a cerebral hemorrhage directly after Yu Ling performed a simple magic during the day was the most favored youngest son of the Jung family. Thinking of this, he asked the bodyguard again. "The salary is pretty good. Do you have a house and a car? Is it time for the children at home to go to school? How is the school?" The bodyguard had no intention of hiding anything like this and immediately said, "The house was given to me by the owner of the family. It is close to 200 square meters and the location is not bad. If I had to buy it myself, it would probably cost tens of millions. I am already very satisfied. I usually drive the car for the owner of the house. As for the car at home, my wife drives a BMW worth more than 500,000 yuan, which is pretty good. There are family arrangements for the children to go to school, so we don't have to worry about these. Our family has never been stingy at all when it comes to our own people." The bodyguard probably also knew that the person this time had a special status, and the Jung family wanted to win over him. So as we talked about how good the Jung family was to them. After listening to this, Su Yi couldn't help but sigh. It's no wonder you are willing to work for the Jung family. The treatment is indeed good. That's right. The bodyguard was about to continue to brag about his employer, but was interrupted by Su Yi. "So if the time comes for you to die for the Jung family, you will be willing to do so, right?" The bodyguard was stunned for a moment and then said, "Although I haven't read many books, I also know that a scholar will die for his confidant. The master of the family treats me well. Of course I won't hesitate when the time comes." Is this what you think alone, or is it what all the bodyguards think? Do other people who help the Jung family think the same way? Su Yi asked. Of course, the head of the family is so kind to all of us. The bodyguard said matter-of-factly. Then I'll be relieved. Su Yi took a long breath and said nothing more. Soon the car drove to a luxurious manor in the suburbs. Su Yi finally discovered that these big families with big businesses don't like to live in bustling urban areas. On the contrary, the suburbs are more in line with their taste. I don't know if it's because they prefer the quietness and scenery of the suburbs, or if it's easier for them to do illegal things in such a remote place. Mr. Su, we're here. If Su Yi took the initiative to talk to the bodyguard at the beginning, then by the end of the conversation, the bodyguard would be looking for various topics to have a good chat with Su Yi. Trying to use his sharp tongue to persuade the person the Jung family is trying to win over. However, Su Yi, who had already gotten the answer he wanted, had no intention of paying attention to him. He continued talking without replying to the previous sentence. Only when I heard him say this did I open my eyes, and finally took Yuling out of the car with me free. There was no need for bodyguards to lead the way, and he walked straight into the house in a swaggering manner. It was as if he was not brought here under such semi-coercion, but returned to his own home. In fact, Su Yi was really looking at the internal facilities of this luxurious manor, and would make some comments with Yu Ling from time to time. Finally, the two of them came to a conclusion. What a loss. The villa I bought for 28 million was definitely a huge loss. If he had known that this would happen, there would be such a nice big manor here, and he would have bought a house that was as cheap as a feather. Wouldn't it be nice to directly inherit the Jung family's inheritance? This place is much more luxurious than that villa, and the various decorations and layouts are more elegant. Just a manor like this doesn't have hundreds of millions, so I don't even think about it. And if you want to acquire such a large piece of land to build your own house, you need a lot of connections. Only these big and well-established families can do it. He wanted to buy such a large manor and mansion, but he didn't even think about it. It was difficult to buy even if he had money. With the slow pace of the two of them, as if they were visiting their own home, it didn't take long before they finally reached the door of the main house. Through the heavy lights, you can vaguely see the shadowy people inside. At the door, a middle-aged man with a haggard look was standing at the door, seemingly specially to greet Su Yi. Of course, this was not in their previous ideas. They forcibly invited Su Yi over in the name of suspecting Su Yi to have killed Zhang Ziye. Even though I have the intention to win over, I definitely can't be too polite at the beginning. What the Jung family originally wanted to do was to give Su Yi a blow, to scare him first, and then see if there was any possibility of seeking cooperation. If there is, then for the sake of profit, a son cannot die. What's more, it has not yet been determined whether Su Yi killed Zhang Ziye. If there is no possibility of cooperation, then there is no doubt that the murderer of Zhang Ziye is Su Yi. Whether they send Su Yi, the murderer, to the official for punishment, or they use their own methods to solve the problem in private, the Jung family has many options. In short, according to the original plan of the Jung family, as long as Su Yi arrived at the villa, of course they would have the final say in everything. No matter how bad it is, it can disgust the Shen family and make the Shen family lose the chance to take off. The Jung family is not at a loss. Anyway, Zhang Ziye is dead. Originally, his death was of no value at all, but now he can be considered to have exerted some residual heat. However, after the bodyguard reported Su Yi's performance along the way to the father and son in charge of the Jung family, the head of the Jung family and the old man felt that it was very possible to win over Su Yi. So he immediately changed his original idea and asked Zhang Yuanqing, the current head of the Jung family, to come to the door to greet him. Although it is not at the entrance of the manor, it is just at the entrance of the main house. But the Jung family didn't put their status in line with Su Yi's from the beginning. In their opinion, this was enough to give them face. As soon as the two met, they chatted a lot with Su Yi along the way. The bodyguard, who thought he was already familiar with her, quickly introduced. Mr. Su, this is the head of our Jung family, Zhang Yuanqing. Zhang Yuanqing, who had just lost his son, tried his best to squeeze out a smile on his face and stretched out his hand. However, it was different from Su Yi's talkative and approachable attitude towards the Jung family when the bodyguard announced. At this time, Su Yi did not open his eyes to look at Zhang Yuanqing. After glancing at him, he continued to look at the interior decoration of the house, leaving only a neither salty nor bland, oh. Then he walked directly into the elegant and luxurious living room. Jung Yuanqing stretched out his hand and froze in place. This was a situation that he had never imagined. After being stunned for a while, he came back to his senses, his face suddenly darkened, and he looked at the bodyguard. After seeing the confusion and bewilderment in the bodyguard's eyes, he probably knew that he was being tricked by Su Yi, and said immediately, "Bring someone to the main house, I want to see what kind of medicine this guy is selling in his gourd." After saying that, he followed Su Yi in with a gloomy face. Su Yi entered the living room of the house for a long time before he saw an old man sitting in a high position. The old man didn't come to say hello to him. Naturally, he had no intention of taking the initiative to say hello to others. But after taking a serious look at the layout and facilities of the house, I became more and more satisfied with it. This is called a mansion. Compared with this shabby villa that he has not yet moved into, what is the difference between it and a thatched shed? Otherwise, it must be enjoyed by a big family with rich heritage and history. And while he was sighing for a while, other people finally entered this unusually spacious living room one after another. At the same time, two solemn-looking bodyguards pushed a body covered with white cloth into the living room on a movable bed. Su Yi couldn't help but frown. He actually pushed the body into his living room, so unlucky. But before he could get angry, Jung Yuanqing, the head of the Jung family who had been ignored by him before, took the lead in taking action. He directly opened the white cloth, revealing Jung's eyes pale and livid face, and then said to Su Yi with a gloomy look, "Su Yi, right, do you know him?" Su Yi glanced at it, then nodded and said, "We know each other. We had dinner at the same hotel last night. How did the dog die? Does Mr. Su know?" Jung Yuanqing asked gloomily. Everyone in the entire living room was staring at Su Yi, waiting for his answer. If it were an ordinary person, this feeling of oppression would still be great. But it is Su Yi who is here now. The next moment, he gave an answer that no one present had expected. Facing Jung Yuanqing's questioning, he nodded decisively and said, "I know, I was the one who killed him, why didn't I know?" Quote. The huge living room suddenly fell into an eerie silence. After a long while, Jung Yuanqing said coldly, "We have cleared all traces on your way here, including your hotel room records and the hotel's internal monitoring information. No one knows that you are here, and no one can prove that you are here, even if you are from disappeared in the world, and there is no evidence that can point to our Jung family. Young man, when you speak, think through your head first." Su Yijun didn't expect that the Jung family was so considerate. After being stunned for a moment, he couldn't help but say, "You're quite a nice person. Don't be too lazy, that's what it is. This guy is your son, right? I'll kill him, whatever happens." This was the first time for the Jung family to see such a bachelor. For a moment, I couldn't help but wonder if he really had something behind him. But after thinking about it, although the Shen family members were on their way, they had sent people to harass them, and they would definitely not be able to come here to save Su Yi in a short time. And Su Yi himself is an ordinary person, and there is no way he has any weapons. So where does he have the confidence to speak like this? The Jung family didn't understand, but they were shocked. After thinking for a while, Jung Yuanqing said, "If you kill someone, you must pay with your life. But now is a new era, and our Jung family are all law-abiding citizens. We usually don't do this kind of thing. I heard that Mr. Su, you have some cooperation with the Shen family. They are working together to develop a drug that can extend people's lives and has special effects in treating cancer. My conditions are not too much. If you give the prescription to our Jung family, this matter is over. If the business is completed, we can share 10% of the future profits with you. Even if it fails, this grudge will it's all written off, and we will never cause you any trouble again." When Su Yi heard this, he immediately smiled as expected, and then said, "I just said why is there such a big fight? It turns out you want money. Then I might as well tell you that my medicine not only has a special effect on cancer, it can treat any kind of cancer, and can greatly extend human life. As for whether it is true or not, I don't need to swear anything. You should have seen the Shen family's investment in me. It's okay if you want a prescription, but I have a condition. Although he had some understanding of this special drug for a long time, Zheng Yuanqing couldn't help but breathe a little heavier after hearing what Su Yi said with his own ears. Hearing this, he quickly said, "What conditions? Aren't you willing to risk your own son's life just for money? Well, if you see the old man above, ask the bodyguard to beat him to death on the spot and show me. I will give you the prescription, and I won't share any of it in the future. All the money you make is yours, how about it? You are looking for death." Seeing Su Yi's teasing expression that was half smiling but not smiling, how could Zheng Yuanqing not know that he was teasing himself and had no intention of handing over the prescription? He immediately said angrily, "Hit me. If you don't want to give, then beat him until he is willing. I want to see if he wants money or his life. People die for wealth and birds die for food. This is indeed true. Since you are already murderous, it is reasonable for me to kill you." When Su Yi saw a group of bodyguards surrounding him, he took a step back and patted Yu Ling's shoulder. "Take your time one by one, starting with these bodyguards." Yu Ling nodded silently, and then pointed at the nearest bodyguard. Su Yi remembered him, the man who said in the car that he was willing to die for the Zheng family. "This time I got what I wanted." The next moment, the bodyguard froze on the spot and then fell straight to the ground. His body was twitching, his eyes were wide open, and blood slowly flowed out from between his eyes, mouth and nose. The death condition was almost exactly the same as that of Zheng Ziyi. The bodyguards behind him were shocked when they saw this, and fell to the ground before they had time to react. After a while, a large piece was poured. This scene directly stunned the Zheng family, who were watching with cold eyes. After being stunned for a long time, half of his body was buried in the ground. The old man of the Zheng family, who had never spoken, raised his hand tremblingly and said, What kind of magic is this? It's not a magic spell, this is called magic." Su Yi explained very considerately. "You can be considered the first people in the world to be killed by magic, and you can be considered a grand burial. You are still worthy of celebration. The Zheng family are not old stubborns who are out of touch with modern society. Naturally, I also have a certain understanding of the so-called magic through some cultural and entertainment works. Before today, if someone told them that there was supernatural power like magic in the world, they would just sneer at it. But now they saw with their own eyes that their loyal bodyguards fell to the ground and died suddenly one by one, but they couldn't help but not believe it. Don't do it again. If you have something to say, please say it. This is Kyushu, and there are laws. You are still young. Don't embark on the road of illegal crime just because of a thought." The old man of the Zheng family said quickly. It can be seen that his desire to survive is indeed very strong. Su Yu heard this and said doubtfully, "What kind of illegal and criminal path? Your Zheng family's eating habits are so bad, the per capita number of patients with cardiovascular and cerebrovascular diseases, and the sudden death of a group of cerebral hemorrhages has anything to do with me. The group died suddenly of cerebral hemorrhage. Although this sounds outrageous, but when the Zheng family thought about it carefully, it seemed that it was really impeccable. It is true that Su Yi was at the scene, but when the forensic doctor checks the cause of death, it will be found that all the people who died here died of natural causes of cerebral hemorrhage. There is no way this can be blamed on Su Yi, who is not dead, right? As for whether the forensic doctors will be more attentive during examinations to find out any other clues because too many people died this time, the Zheng family has no hope. If it could be found out, the many famous doctors and experienced forensic doctors they called when Zheng Ziyi died would have discovered the abnormality long ago. So even if Su Yi killed the entire Zheng family here, no one would be able to do anything to him. What's more, the Zheng family had no good intentions when they invited Su Yi over, and they cleaned up all traces along the way. Since this was not their first time doing this kind of thing, they were very familiar with it. By then the official may not be able to discover that Su Yi has been here. Threatening Su Yi with Kyushu's official laws has no deterrent effect at all. Desperation began to appear in the eyes of the Zheng family members. Zheng Yuanqing, who reacted the fastest, said with a gloomy face, "How about making a deal?" "What deal?" "Use our Zheng family's tens of billions of net worth to buy the lives of our entire family. If you die, won't the money still be mine?" The Zheng family was silenced by Su Yi again. The old man seemed to want to say something more, but was interrupted by Zheng Yuanqing. Dad, there's no need to say anything more. We misunderstood what happened today. Now that it's over, there's nothing more to say. If you want to kill or cut into pieces, you can do whatever you want. Look, this is a bit like a gangster. Su Yi applauded. The Zheng family does similar things to the Shen family, half black and half white. That is to say, he has restrained himself through severe crackdowns in recent years. Going back a little further, there is nothing wrong with saying that he is a gang boss. By the way, your Zheng family should be more than just a few people here, right? Don't worry, I never leave any trouble in my affairs, and I will keep your whole family in order. After Su Yi said that, he was about to let Yu Ling take action. Unexpectedly, Zheng Yuanqing, who seemed very grand and prepared to die generously, suddenly broke his guard, knelt down and said, "The rules of the rivers and lakes are to never bring harm to your wife and children. Everyone present today has a share in what happened to you. You killed us all, and we don't have any objections. But the other members of the Zheng family don't know anything about this, so why bother killing them all? Have you Zheng family been so mixed up now? Have you followed the rules of the world you mentioned when facing all enemies?" Su Yi asked, and then pointed at Yu Ling with a half smile. "Think carefully before you answer. She knows the magic of lie detection. If you dare to lie to me, I guarantee that it will be difficult for you to die." Zheng Yuanqing fell silent. The so-called rules of the world are, of course, something you come up with when you are at a disadvantage. When I had the advantage before, how could they tell me any rules? The Zheng family had done it more than once before, just to steal land at a low price and secretly wipe out the entire family of a nail-biter household. During the chaotic period more than 10 years ago, what was done was even more outrageous than this. When they meet their colleagues who are trying to steal business, they will just wipe out the whole family. They will not even let go of children as young as a few years old. Seeing that he didn't speak, Su Yi continued to say to Yu Ling, "You have a way to destroy them all, right? Well, there is a kind of blood magic. Using the blood of one of them as a trigger, a blood curse can be issued. Even if the cursed object hides in the ends of the earth, he will not escape death." Yu Ling deliberately answered in Kyushu dialect. Hearing this, the despair in the eyes of Zheng Yuanqing and others became even greater. Seeing this, Su Yi lost his mind of cat and mouse. He waved his hands casually and said, "Kill them all." Yes, Yu Ling's eyes flashed, and except for the two of them, there was no one left standing in the entire hall. Thousands of kilometers away from here, a man in his 30s was boarding a plane back home with his son, daughter and wife. The younger brother of the family died suddenly due to an accident. The man could not tell whether he was happy or sad. To be happy, that's true. After all, there is one less person competing for the property. To say that he is sad is not false. After all, he is his biological brother who he grew up watching. But his wife doesn't have so many messy emotions. After knowing that my brother-in-law died and that my husband would inherit more property in the future, if he hadn't been worried about the negative impact, he would have opened the champagne long ago. When she went home with her husband and children to attend the funeral, she was the most positive person. However, just when he was imagining that his husband's second brother would die and his husband would inherit all the Zheng family's property. However, I found that my husband and children seemed to have suddenly fallen asleep just after boarding the plane. She felt a little strange, but she didn't ask much. She just assumed it was because she was too tired to catch a plane. When the plane is about to take off, the flight attendant comes over to remind them that they can fasten their seat belts. The woman who noticed that her husband had not fastened his seat belt wanted to wake him up, but no matter how much she pushed or shouted, she could not see any movement from the man. Until a certain moment, the man kept his head down and fell stiffly on the floor of the plane without making any sound. The same situation happened to two children, a boy and a girl, sitting next to the man. The screams broke the silence in the cabin and caused the flight about to take off to be stranded at the airport. At the same moment, the same thing happened in many places across Kyushu and even around the world. In the end, different doctors in different countries and regions gave the same diagnosis. These people all died of cerebral hemorrhage caused by cardiovascular and cerebrovascular diseases. They were natural deaths without any human factors. The only thing they have in common is that they both have the surname Jung. After coming out of the Jung family's luxurious manor, Suyi waited at the door for about 10 minutes before meeting Shen Mingwen, who hurried over. He brought about 10 cars with him, and as soon as he stopped at the entrance of the Jung family's manor, dozens of fierce bodyguards in black rushed down. Seeing Su Yi sitting on the flower bed at the door holding Yu Ling and talking about something, although Shen Mingwen didn't understand what the situation was, he hurriedly came over and asked, "Mr. Su, are you okay?" "I'm fine, but the Jung family may be a little bit lost." Su Yi waved his hand. Shen Mingwen looked towards the Jung family's mansion. It was past 5 o'clock in the morning, and the sky was already turning white. The Jung family's huge mansion was brightly lit, but it was eerily quiet. It gives people an inexplicable and eerie feeling. What happened to the Jung family? Shen Mingwen seemed to have guessed something and swallowed subconsciously. "Ah, it's nothing. It's just that their family seems to have some disgusting genetic disease. They didn't sleep in the middle of the night and they had to call me here from the hotel. Then the whole family got sick together and they all died suddenly. It's really scary." Su He also stood up and patted Shen Mingwen on the shoulder. "I'm a kind-hearted person who can't bear to see dead people. Since you're here, old Shen, I'll leave this place to you. I have to go back to the hotel to catch up on my sleep. By the way, I quite like the Jung family manor. Please clean it up later. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more."